A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, just waiting.
It's lights out and away we go. It's a great stop from Sebastian Vettel. Wink up off the inside. They run, but the Red Bull Racing man has got through. The champion's done the job. They're all gone. They're all gone. Tander's off. McLaughlin's off. Make room. Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt. There's another 7-time champ. Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup championship.
Good evening everybody and welcome to the penultimate round of the AMS Oz GT3 series. Coming to you from Road America, the championship is very evenly poised and any number of drivers are still mathematically in contention for the title. It's Nether here from the ARW commentary team to bring you tonight's action in conjunction with Short Shift Podcast. Joining me as always for GT3 commentary is Bagsy. How are you, Bagsy?
Not bad, Nether. How you doing?
Good, thank you, mate. Good. And as we take a look at the points situation, as I alluded to a few seconds ago, it is very tight at the top, and for the first time, Brock Harvey leads this championship.
Yeah, it was I wouldn't say a good race from him last race, but a consistent race. He kept it on the track when he needed to and gained some valuable points that put him into the lead with the two closest rivals, Lewis Wedding and Greg Nangle, both failing to finish. Wedding for the second time in a row means that, and the next two people not starting the race, so Brock Harvey taking advantage of it when he needs to.
Yeah, certainly is, and if we have a look down the list there as well, it's utterly dominated by Pro B, but sneaking into the top 10, David Keane, who's Pro-Am, and Matt Webb has got a pair of victories on the trot, and he's snuck into there into 9th as well. He's mathematically still in the hunt for this title.
Yeah, it's 20 points for a race win, and the leader's on 65, so Matt Webb is the last person with the possibility. It's going to be very difficult for him, we'll be honest. Same with our 8th and 7th place people. But it's basically anyone from 6th upwards, so there's only 10 points back, have a good chance. Matt Webb, obviously, he's been in that Nissan GTR, which back in Sebring, it had a balance of power adjustment with a loss of weight, which was then increased in Spa, and now it's back to where it was here for Road America. So back even with the field, but it hasn't slowed him down because as we go into the qualifying session, Matt Webb topped the timing for practice. Yeah,
he certainly did. And as we get rid of the points and have a look at the circuits, I hope this is going to work. Yes, it does. Thank you very much. This is your circuit, Road America. We've got 6.5k circuit, just slightly shorter than the last round we had at Spa. 14 turns. It's an 80-minute race, and the estimated laps is 38. We've had to make a little adjustment to the calculations because they were a little bit wrong. But it is an 80-minute race and 38 laps. It is next week. The next round and final round is going to be a 120-minute event. Clockwise direction. And as per usual, 2 times tyre, 2 times the fuel. Well, it's about time, Bagsy. I think we have a bit of a look at what's going on in the qualifying session. This practice has just finished. As you alluded to, it was Matt Webb at the top of the standings, debuting a new livery this round as well. There he is on the screen as the qualifying gets underway. But first man out on the circuit that we've picked up is Jamie Snow in the number 14 Le Mans go-karting Ferrari, and he heads a couple of other cars that are behind him on track, making their way down this long marine sweeping straight towards turn 5 at the start of qualifying. It's a 2-minute lap, so they're only going to get 2 or 3 bites at the cherry. They've got plenty of track space to do it.
Yeah, it's a big track, and you'd think they wouldn't get bunched up, but we know how eager these guys are to get out, and so there's every chance that we will see some people close together, but hopefully no blocking, because that will make them suffer the wrath of the stewards if it gets brought up later on.
That is correct. We did have a steward's inquiry into a little incident that took place in the first race of the double header at Bathurst for the closing round of the Super Series on Thursday. It took a little bit of time to sort that out, and there was a 20-second time penalty handed out to Johnny for his little indiscretion, which sent Lewis Wedding off the road and into the sand trap at the chase, but nonetheless it didn't affect his overall third place honours for that particular series. But you are correct, you do not want to impede someone or ruin someone else's race because the stewards do take a dim view of it.
It's just having a look. I'm just observing that new livery you mentioned of Matt Webb's. It's quite nice on that GTR. I'm partial to the GTR as it is already, having it being the car I ran in ARW's running of this GT3 series, and I like what's been done with it.
Yeah, actually, I'm quite a fan of it too. Actually, it goes quite nicely. Now, Jamie Snow's just crossed the line to start his first flying lap, and most of the cars actually now out on the circuit. So let's just stay with Snow, and we'll just talk you around a lap here from the third person view. So through turn one, in actual fact, he's pulled off the road there, so he's letting, I think that might be Brendan Ross through. So that's a bit strange. So Snow letting another car go. He's now through turn three. Now, some of the turns are a bit strange here because he went through turn one and there's a very, very small kink between turns 1 and 3 that's called turn 2. It really doesn't look like a turn, but that is the case. And same here, just coming out of that bridge, that is a kink. So there's a turn there as well for turn 4. So this is actually turn 5. It's extremely weird. I thought it would have only been treated as 12-turn circuit, but it's unfortunately those two little slight, 1 degree kinks count as a corner in the Americans' eyes.
Yeah, sort of like turn 3 in Austria, which doesn't actually exist, in the words of Martin Brundle.
Well, yes, that's right. Going up the hill towards up towards the hairpin, and we've got the Austrian Grand Prix coming up a bit later on this evening as well. So it's a full, and actually MotoGP as well. So it's a full motorsport Sunday. Got your AMS Oz GT3s, your MotoGP, and your Formula One. So looking forward to a rather long night as we see Jamie Snow get very, very wide. And he's got, I think that's Johnny all over the back of him as well, but this is in qualifying. So Johnny with a bit of a slide there job as well, and a couple of guys kicking up some rooster tails. And this is fun to think that this is only qualifying as well, and they're already going hammer and tongs at it, trying to get the best out of each other. Now Snow's thought better of this. He's just gotten out of it and gone straight on at the hairpin. Sorry, not the hairpin. At turn 12 it was there. So.
Yeah, so he's just having a quick browse of the track map, and there's huge amounts of space between this group here and the last person to go on track, Lewis Wedding.
Yeah.
And it's just it makes you think why they can't be a bit more judicious with their use of space. So if we've got Brendan Ross trying to get a slipstream on Johnny going down the main straight here. Yeah,
so Johnny set the initial fastest time there, so he was hammering around that lap in a 2:02.1. So that's
very impressive. I think that's the fastest we've seen so far.
It's the second quickest. So Matt Webb has gotten into the 2:01.9s at the back end of practice, obviously on a qualifying run there as well. So Matt Webb the first 2:01 we've seen, but Johnny lays down a very, very early marker of a 2:02.1, and he's getting on with it. And he's come to grips with that Porsche rather nicely, obviously transitioning from the Porsche in the Super Series to the Porsche 991 in the GT3 Series. Let's see how he goes coming up to the Sector 1 split, which is just under the other side of the bridge here.
Matt Webb just popped in a time to put him first, but only by 0.02 of a second.
Yep. Now, Johnny hasn't registered a time through the second split, so I think potentially that he may have got maybe a bit of a track violation or something there, but Matt Webb's, as you just pointed out, has just popped in a time that's just millimetres, I think is probably the right term for it, quicker than Johnny, so he's only 0.02 of a second faster. We watch Johnny come out of the carousel here.
One of the newcomers, Jaden Draper, has put in a smart lap time and got himself up into 6th in the McLaren.
Yes, so you are right, Jaden Draper is a new addition to the league, and good to see Anthony Graham returning after his excellent debut at Spa the last round. So he's
sorry to cut across you. Johnny is only 7,000ths down on the current pole position time as he's coming into the final corner.
Yeah, we've been staying with him on this lap just to see what he can monster, but he didn't register a Sector 1 time, so I thought that maybe he had a little bit of track violation, but he did register a Sector 2 time. But let's see if this time is recognised. He comes to the line, and it's a bit slower than he dropped away, but he's not that far away, to be honest with you, Bagsy. He's 2 very consistent laps that have been registered as he pulls over. And here's Matt Webb in that livery that we've been talking about. So this is the first look for our viewers. And this very smart red, white, and I think it's probably gunmetal grey sort of a livery. Actually, and it's got a bit of anime on the side there as well. It actually really looks... It suits that car, doesn't it, Bagsy?
Yeah, it's obviously a Japanese-inspired livery for a very Japanese car. Probably, in my opinion, the best car that comes out of Japan, to be honest.
And just they've been making this GTR for quite some time as well, haven't they? I mean, back in like 10 years old or something it is now, but they still continue to refine it and build it, and it's a fantastic car.
That lap that Johnny set just before, even though it wasn't a personal best for him, he did set a purple middle sector. So clearly that Porsche is quite good through the carousel and through the twistier sections of this track.
Now, I'm just having a look down the timing screens as well, Bagsy, and I'm going to see if I can find Lewis Wedding. Here he is, because Wedding's got nearly half a second on the best on the pole time at the moment in the Lamborghini. So he's on a charge, Wedding. As we said before, he's had 2 results in the last couple of rounds that haven't gone his way. A technical glitch at Sebring, and his Twitch his stream got froze by OBS at the last round in Spa, and unfortunately put him out of the race, which is why we alluded to Brock Harvey's got the points lead at the moment. But Wedding up the hill in the Lamborghini. What can he do? Has he got the legs on the Lambo? And he does, but he lost a bit of time through that 3rd sector, so he does a 2:01.987, just inches behind Matt Webb's practice benchmark of a 2:01.968. So Wedding's got he had half a second, nearly half a second after 2 sectors, but dropped it all the way in the 3rd sector and only finished about the 10th and a half clear.
Yeah, it was an excellent lap from Lewis. He had a purple first sector, and the other 2 actually weren't purple sectors. Johnny still has the best middle sector, and Matt Webb the best last sector. Yep. So he really gained all that time in the first sector. It was quite an impressive first sector. The first sector is basically just 2 straights and a couple of medium, 1 high speed and a couple of medium speed corners. So clearly that Lambo very effective in a straight line.
Yeah. Well, we kind of expected that the Benzes would be very quick in the straight line as well, which they have. I mean, you can see that Tara's up there in 5th place at the moment, but as we've alluded to many times, the Benz not the best technically through the technical sections, so it does struggle for grip a little bit.
Yeah, it's the only car that could be described more like a boat than the Merc is probably the Bentley, which is also affectionately known as the Boatley because of its size of a small luxury super yacht.
Yes, it is. We're watching Jamie Snow as he lowers his PB mark by just over a tenth, but he slides it very, very wide. That understeered very, very badly off of turn 6. So that'll be an abandonment of a lap. But thankfully behind him, Lewis Wedding's not on a fast lap. He's on an out lap. But Jamie pulls over and lets him go anyway. Not much he could do there. There's Philip Boak exiting the pits as well, actually coming into the pits in the BMW.
Got Johnny on a lap that's putting him very close to Matt Webb's time.
Well,
he might be able to gain into second, but it depends. He should gain a lot of time coming through the carousel, though.
Yeah, well, let's see how he goes through the carousel. Beautiful line, nice and tight. Now on the power hard under the Suzuki sign. Let's see what the Sector 2 time is going to be. And it's good. Up, but not by very much. But he's up on his own PB by a tenth. But more importantly, has got some time on Matt Webb. Lewis Wedding gets out of the way down there at turn 12. As Johnny negotiates turn 13.
Once again, the Porsche still very fast through that second sector. That wasn't actually even a purple lap time for Johnny there. So he's done better in his first sector. We'll see if he can go better in his last sector here. Obviously, he doesn't have the straight line speed as he goes up the hill in the Porsche and comes to the line. We'll see what time he gets.
Well, under the bridge end. Wow, look at that. Managed to find some more time. So he's up by just over a tenth. So a 2:01.869 and the best time of the race weekend so far. And that's a very, very impressive time from that Porsche and the driver of it. Great job.
interestingly, on a lap that had no purple sectors, he just strung together 3 excellent sectors, and it was good enough for pole.
Yep.
Provisional pole, that is. We do still have 3 minutes and a half to go.
Yeah, 3.5 minutes remaining. So here's Lewis Wedding. So he's second on the order, coming down to turn number 5. Let's see what sort of lap of sector times he can get. Hard on the brakes. One of the hardest braking points on the circuit here, turn 5. So turn 1 and turn 5 and turn 12, your 3 hard braking points. Wedding's up on the pole time by over a tenth and a half, but importantly, his home PB time, he wasn't very far behind his own PB time, so not a purple sector, but a very, very good sector, just quicker than what Johnny managed to do. Little local yellow flag there with Johnny pulling out of the way to let Lewis by. Oh, slides it out wide too, Lewis.
Thing is, though, he was down his personal best and he was up on the current pole time because that Porsche isn't as fast in a straight line as the Lamborghini, as we alluded to before. So the real question will be, is he up as he comes after going through the carousel there to the second sector split, which is going to be the important one. He comes through it now.
Yeah. He's lost time.
Down by a long time. That Lamborghini is not as good in the corners.
No, and he was a little bit offline as well at the carousel. He was a little bit closer to the marbles than what he wanted to be. But he's going to get another crack at the lap if he's got fuel for it. He'll definitely get one more flying lap in. And behind him as well, Matt Webb's going quicker again as well as he's coming out of the carousel as well. So we'll cut back to him when we see what lap time Lewis Wedding can produce. And actual fact, I'm also seeing Greg Tara setting a decent time as well. So Wedding to the line, he will set a 2:02.2, so Richard Bennett will be proud of that one, but not quick enough. So here's Greg Tara. So he'd set some good sector times. He'd set a good sector 1 time, not so good sector 2, but he's on the road. He's ahead of Matt Webb, who we'll cut back to in a minute. Matt Webb's
2 tenths up on his current personal best.
Yeah, he's lost. He's not on a hot lap, but there's Webb in back of shot as Tara goes up the hill. And that bends. Can it put its power down and get a decent time? It'll be into the 2:02s for Tara. He goes up to 6 with a 2:02.5. Here's Matt Webb to the line, and he does a 2:01.9. He jumps Wedding. He goes to second, so closes the gap. Johnny's still got a 10th though, and Johnny's in the pits. So Johnny and Webb are in the pits. And Wedding is as well, and so is Anthony Graham. So those guys have put the queue in the rack. They think that they've done enough. Can anyone from behind spoil the party? I don't think anybody is in a position where they really can. This man might. Jaden Draper, so on debut in the McLaren, now heading under the bridge through turn 4 and down to turn 5. He's been setting some very respectable times on debut. His best time there, a 2:02.3, finds himself ahead of some of the more established runners in the field. Let's see what he produces through Sector 1.
We've heard from Lewis Wedding that, or at least in the opinion of, that's a very good time.
That's extremely good.
500ths down. We've heard from Lewis Wedding, they'll be good enough for second currently. That Wedding believes that the McLaren is the fastest car around the track. He takes it upon himself to test all the cars, and he felt that the McLaren was the fastest, but he prefers his Lamborghini, obviously. The thing is, though, it may be the fastest, but it is also the thirstiest car. We'll be talking about that later on during the race in terms of the fuel economy of all these cars.
Yes, that is indeed a rather interesting talking point, how much fuel these cars consume and how big their fuel tanks are. Draper through the kink now. Looks so planted. What's the time through Sector 2? And this is very, very close. This is going to leap him up the order if he can keep this pace. This is a potential front row if he can hold it together through turn 12.
Actually, that will actually still put him in 4th. He'll be 7 thousandths off of the front row with that time.
My mistake. I do apologise if that is true. He was only a tenth and a bit away from the top time. Through the final turn now. Now hard on the power. Up the hill and under the bridge and to the line. What's he going to produce? The clock is counting down. It's a 2-minute 2.0 and goes on to the second row. So great job. Found a bit of time, and you're right, look at he dropped away a little bit, but I mean, he's only 22 hundredths off the pole time, so a staggeringly good time on debut as well. Probably the star qualifier on debut, but take nothing away from this man. Johnny has set the timing screens alight, a 2:01.8, fastest time of the race weekend and of qualifying. He is your pole sitter.
Yeah, just we've still got some people coming through the final couple of sectors. Matt Schwass currently in 10th He's up half a second on his PB, so he's looking to jump up a few places.
Yeah, so he's got Dwayne Davies behind him as well, and Dwayne Davies has gone a bit wider than he wanted to. We'll see if Matt Schwass can improve. There's only 4 cars remaining on the circuit. We don't think any of these guys are going to challenge for the pole, but they can certainly move themselves about the order with a good lap.
Yeah, he's about a second and a half to the next person, Brock Harvey, there, so he probably won't get any higher, but he does need to protect his time from those behind him who are only a few tenths down.
He certainly does. So Matt Schwass to the line, currently 10th, stays 10th. Dwayne Davies jumps up the order to 11th, so good time from Dwayne Davies. Here's Philip Boak, he's still out on the circuit as well, coming down to the line now, and he remains 13th. So no late change in the order from those guys. Dwayne Davies moving up 1 position, Matt Schwass staying where he is, but it'll be Johnny from Matt Webb on the front row, and Lewis Wedding occupies row number 2 with Jaden Draper. But more importantly, your current points leader, Brock Harvey, there he is in the Aston Martin, down in 9th. And look, only a second away from the pole time. Nothing to be frowned upon there, but he'll just be looking for another one of those consistent drives.
Yeah, we've been missing Baker and his consistent drives the last couple of weeks, but Brock has been trying to step up to the plate and fill that spot, and he's not been doing a bad job, as evidenced by his championship lead.
Yes. Well, now we have a little 6-minute warm-up session just before we get underway, and Bagsy, I believe you got some figures there. You alluded to them before about the kinds of fuel consumption that some of these cars have, and how that might influence tonight's race.
Yeah, so we've had our tame racing driver Lewis Wedding go around and give us some details. And the McLaren is the thirstiest car of the field. It goes at about 8.9 litres per lap when you're at full chat, and compared to the sort of the cars that like to sip at their fuel rather than glug it down like they're Bob Hawke at the cricket, is the Audis, Lambos and Porsches. They all do about 7.9 litres per lap. So it might not sound like much, but a litre a lap really does add up quite a bit over these races. At 8 litres a lap, you can do a 14 or 15 lap stint, depending on how much you're pushing. Obviously, you have to have your in-lap as well, so about 15 laps. And in a race that's going to be about 38 laps, that's 2 pit stops, but with the possibility of 1 with safety cars. When you go up to 9 litres a lap, that's every lap using an extra litre. So once you've done 8 laps or half a stint, you've already lost a lap sort of thing. So you're going to be doing at least 1 lap less. It's not very good really, but the trade-off is you get better power, but is it worth it?
That's exactly right. When we look through the order here, we've got a decent turnout. We had 18 drivers on the field, and a couple of them have just decided to take a few moments to jump out the server and sort themselves out and get themselves back in. Hopefully it won't affect the race order. They've got plenty of time. They've got 5 minutes to get themselves sorted. But I guess we turn our attention in a little bit, Bagsy, probably to the championship as well, given some of the issues that some of the contenders have had over recent weeks, and those that have been here and are no longer racing or have missed a couple of races here and there. It's sort of made it a bit of, and also I guess to a degree the balance of performance has also affected this as well. What's your take on the championship? Where do you think the winner out of the top, say, 10 drivers who are, like I said, are still mathematically in with a shot? I mean, some of them toward the bottom end of that top 10 need results to go their way in order for themselves to leap up the order. But who do you think's going to be at the top of the pile come the end of Laguna Seca?
Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard to tell just because of the fact that we don't know what can happen. But personally, I think Lewis Wedding is due for some luck. He's either not started a race, not finished it, or finished in first. So you'd probably back him to produce a couple of good results just to get the championship win. Brock Harvey, though, if things go his way, he's currently 5 points ahead. If he can increase his lead on Wedding and Angle by another 5 points, say, then he'd only need, I believe, a 6th place finish to clinch the championship in the final round at Laguna Seca, which could be as simple as just staying on the track, given it's a very tricky track, especially for 2 hours like we're doing in the final round.
Yeah, and it's a very short circuit as well compared to Road America. It's basically half the length, and with a pack of 18 hungry cars on that circuit as well, it's going to lead to some congestion. So I wouldn't put it past you that there's going to be quite a few collisions and probably a few safety cars in that race as well. So just keeping your nose clean at Laguna Seca, I think, is going to be a challenge in its own right.
Yeah, and plus, of course, Laguna Seca being home to the infamous corkscrew, which we saw caught a few people out when the F3s raced there a few weeks ago.
Absolutely. We saw not only catching a few people out, but also quite a few engine blow-ups in the F3, but thankfully no real problems with blowing up engines in the GT3 series. We've seen very, very few, if any at all. Most of the issues have been technical dramas where disconnections, or in Lewis's case, OBS deciding to play up, but we hope to good God that he doesn't have that sort of problem tonight. You definitely said, I think Lady Luck is probably due to shine upon him and at least give him a clean run. If he doesn't finish first, at least allow him to finish the race, more importantly. Yeah,
finishing the race is always the most important thing in an endurance format. It's really been what's kept this championship close, because we've had people who haven't finished, and that's really draining back. Like, Lewis Wedding, 2 DNFs in a row, and he's only 5 points behind the leader. If he'd managed to bring home the car even in a 10th, that would have been 5 points. If he'd done that in both races, he would be 5 points ahead in the championship. So it's all swings and roundabouts depending on where you are.
That's exactly right. Well, we've also got a little bit of a change to the start procedure, or more so a reversal of the start procedure. You may recall at Spa we had some dilemmas with the safety car, and the safety car was removed from the parade lap because of some issues it had, but it still caused us a few issues. But tonight it returns to the stock standard. Pace car will lead the field around and rolling start. And also, sorry, go on, Bagsy.
Yeah, it'll be quite nice to have it back to the way it was. It did cause a little bit of confusion between people. It seems like the stewards will also be policing the pit exit quite sternly. If you come out of the pits and crash into somebody, you'll be given a race ban. I believe there'll be no warnings and no recourse there.
Yep.
You'll be straight out into the doghouse, because we've got to be. It's a very short pit exit here. It feeds straight back out onto the track, not onto the racing line, but out onto the track. And especially in this sort of endurance format, if you're pitting, you could come out in front of people who are maybe a lap ahead, or maybe in a race position for you, but they could be going 2 or 3 wide behind you. Yep. And if you come out and straight into that battle and cause an incident, that's not very good.
Yep. Well, I've just very, very crudely grabbed my mouse and just giving our viewers a look at where the pit exit actually is. So there it is. And if you see, I'll swing the camera around for you. The start-finish line is just that little gantry back there. And down that direction there is the run into turn 1. So it's not on the racing line, so there's plenty of room to come out, but you very quickly have to merge from the right to the left in order to take your racing line through turn number 1. So they'll be right on it, the stewards, having a look at that throughout the course of the race. More likely to be looked at probably post-race. But it is a very, very interesting pit exit, and there should be no issues coming in on the pit entry either, because as you saw from the still shot we were having a look at during the warm-up, it's very, very much offline and very easy to get into.
Yeah, especially since it's uphill, you can really attack the pit entry line if you want to. You can, because people generally, they tend to be careful in an endurance format when you're coming into the pit lane. You don't want to get a speeding penalty and have to do a drive-through. But if you're brave and if you're very precise with it, you can gain a second or 2 or 3 coming in and attacking that pit line.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to be, as I said, you've got to be careful when you attack that pit line too, because it does come up on you very quickly, even though you're going uphill, and you've really got to be on it to get the car slowed down at exactly the right moment so you don't cross that line with too much speed. Well, cars are all gridded up. Just waiting on a few more to come out of the pits, and we will be on the parade lap. And the parade lap now begins. And Bagsy, let's go through the order.
Well, in pole position, we have Johnny with a very, very impressive lap. He is not only on pole position, but the lead Pro B runner. I believe this is the first Pro B pole position we've had in this series.
It's very possible. I'm actually just looking through the order. I'm actually just looking through the order now, and I think you're probably right. We've had actually no, it might be Aaron Thomas. No, Aaron Thomas is the Pro A. Snow's A. Corey. No, it is the first Pro B pole.
Yeah, there you go. It's quite impressive from Johnny there, and definitely to be commended. Matt Webb looking to continue his impressive run of victories. Lewis Wedding, our previous run of victories with 3 in a row. So the past 5 races have been won by the people in the top 2. As in the top 3, sorry. Jane Draper with a good debut performance. He's put that McLaren on the on the second row. Anthony Graham, his second week in the GTs in that Ferrari, 5th place. 6th place is Greg Tara. 7th is Brenton Foley. 8th is Greg Nangle, our other battler for the championship. Well, I say other battler, directly behind him in 9th is Brock Harvey, the championship leader, just giving his lights a bit of a flash there. 10th place, Matt Schwass in still my favourite Ferrari. 11th, Dwayne Davies in for the DD's Racing Shell V-Power car. Brendan Ross in 12th place. Philip Boak in 13th. Jamie Snow is in 14th place in the Snowballs Ferrari. 15th place is Luke. 16th place is Aussie in the other McLaren, which is, I believe, identical to the McLaren at the front, so hopefully we are able to differentiate between the two. Voda is 17th in the final GTR, and Andy is 18th in the 991 GT3.
Important to note, I believe that I'm not sure if Andy actually set a time in qualifying. I'm not sure if he's a late entry into the server or was down the back initially.
He joined after qualifying, right, so he did not set a time.
So that's why he's at the back. Well, the lights are out on the pace car as they come out of the carousel and now through the aptly named, or turn 11, aptly named the Kink.
And now it's taken flat out in these cars.
Yeah, it seems to be taking flat out. A lot of them are really using the grip that some of these GT3 cars have to attack that, and obviously putting it to good effect in qualifying. Now Johnny's choosing, actually he'll be on the inside for turn 1 when we get down there. The current he's a runaway leader, but he's the runaway victor for the last 2 rounds. Matt Webb alongside him. He'll have his work cut out to try and round that Porsche up before turn 1. And then Lewis Wedding, he just needs a good race here. He hasn't scored the last 2 rounds, so he really needs to break the shackles and try and stamp his authority on this championship if he can. He led it for the better part of a couple of rounds, and unfortunately technical dramas have caused him to go into a tie for second at the moment, but will be second on countback if it ended today. As the pace car peels off, and they need to sort themselves out here and address the start flag, and here we go. The green flag's in the air, and we are away. Johnny got away smartly, but Matt Webb got away even better. Lewis Wedding looking on the inside of Johnny. They're going 3 right into turn 1. This is way too early to get way too excited. And Wedding is going to know. Wedding with a touch, and all 3 of them have had to come together. A little bit of tap, but they get themselves sorted. Wedding has somehow gotten himself into front. Jaden Draper's buying into this now. Johnny's getting monstered on the run to turn 3. And he loses out. He's in the marbles, but he'll hold on to 3rd. But Lewis Wedding with a little bit of a touch, just understeered a little bit wide, gave Johnny a bit of a tap. He in turn gave Matt Webb a tap, and Webb now battling with that's Tara behind there in the Mercedes as well, trying to buy in on Webb, but he's going to have to settle a bit here. Webb's given Johnny a tap. Webb's given Johnny a tap on the run down to turn 5. No rear wing for Johnny, and I'm sure that Matt Webb's going to receive a penalty for that. But that was very, very early to make such a bad mistake. And Johnny drops to the back of the field, and we'll go back and we'll have a bit of a look at that to see exactly what happened on the replay. On the run down here to turn 5, Matt Webb was going to go to the inside. He just made his move a bit too late, just didn't pull it up under braking. I don't know if he was expecting Johnny to brake a bit later than what he did, but that is a disastrous start to the pole sitter. He's gone from the front to the back, and unfortunately that piece of it was through no fault of his own.
Yeah, it's such a shame for Johnny. He got swamped on the start. That we can see the Porsche not having the straight line speed compared to the GTR and the Lamborghini. And yeah, that Matt Webb just not quite. Oh, as Jamie Snow has spun coming out of the kink. He's spun off the racing line though, and no harm done to other people, harm done to his car.
Well, he's gotten away with it. Very, very lucky, Jamie Snow.
Matt Webb, well, he's done a lot of damage to the front of that Ferrari, unfortunately. Matt Webb, though, has dropped down to 12th with that. But a free kick, really, for our current leader, Lewis Wedding. He's had two of his closest rivals for this race go out of the race on the third, sorry, not the third corner, the fifth corner, because we have two non-existing corners that have been added. So that's quite good for him. But he is being kept in check by Jane Draper at the moment, only half a second down, and looks like he's looking a bit racy there.
Yeah, Draper's keeping him honest here. If I'm honest with you, Bagsy, I wouldn't be surprised to see if something happens to Lewis Wedding after this race, because he did understeer a bit wide. It was 3 wide into turn 1. He did pull it up, but understeered a bit wide, gave Johnny a bit of a tap, who in turn gave Matt Webb a tap, and Lewis did win out as a result of that. So you can technically say he gained advantages. Draper has a look on the inside here, running down to turn 5, and gets it done, and skates it through the marbles, and somehow manages to hang on to that position. But Wedding's not done. Wedding has another look back on the inside of 6. Draper gives him the room, but Draper will have the ground here the high ground here for turn 7, and somehow he's made that pass move, and that's a great job.
I have no idea how he got that car stopped. That was an incredible performance under the brakes. He just pulled it up in time to be in front of.
Oh, he's very wide there, though.
Hold off his line. Everyone's quite wide there. Actually, that's. I'm not sure. I don't believe it counts as a track cut there. I believe that's a legitimate racing line through there for everyone. But a very impressive move from Jaden Draper. I did say he was looking racy. I didn't realise he was going to be that racy. Just on the second lap. That was. I'm almost, I'd say I'm speechless, but I've been talking for the last 15 seconds about it.
Supreme car control, I think, is the only way you can describe that. And he's very quickly opened up a 7/10 advantage over Lewis Wedding as well. So he's got pace in that McLaren, Jaden Draper, on debut. Just back to my point I was making before, I mean, I kind of feel that Wedding technically gained a little bit of an advantage because he didn't redress the position by giving Johnny and Matt Webb the tap that they did and sending them wide. But we'll see what happens post-race. We're not going to speculate too much on it now, but I wouldn't be surprised if something happens post-race. We will wait and see. Lap 2 is now in the books. Jaden Draper, your new race leader. We've had 3 or 4 race leaders in the opening 2 laps.
Yeah, we're just on the first corner. So I think because it's the start of the race, it's one of those things that, and it wasn't huge contact either. It was more door-to-door rubbing than anything between the 3 of them. I think he should be okay for that. You know, there's a bit of leniency to be said for opening couple of corners instance. Less so for Matt Webb, though, down into the 5th corner, just because that was just him leaving his braking too late and trying to be a bit too greedy under brakes.
Yep, well, Wedding has just closed the gap down to Draper just a little bit, so maybe the field just starting to even out as tyres come in. Brenton Foley's actually moved ahead of Greg Turra behind this pair as well, Bagsy, so he's made up some good positions already. If we look down, he's already gained 4 positions since the start, so here he is in that BF Race Engineering Caltex-sponsored Ferrari.
He's closing in on this front pair as well, which is something you said. He's improved, probably I would say the most improved performer of all the AMS Oz drivers from when he started. He's picked it up quite quickly.
Yeah, he has, and the only thing he just has on a couple of blot on his copybook every now and again was through his race strategy. We saw it at Suzuka that he didn't plan that out too well, and he's had a couple of minor offs, but nonetheless he's getting better, and a lot of these drivers are getting better as well. As we look at this wonderful helicopter shot of him going through the kink. Now cut back to this trackside shot. Our points leader, Brock Harvey, was up as high as 7th or 8th at one stage by virtue of what was going on ahead of him, and he's now dropped all the way back down to 11th, so he's losing a few points off of his lead in the championship at the moment, but still a long way to go.
So Aussie in that McLaren, who was starting near the back, is up to 10th now. Yeah, which is also very impressive.
Yeah, it's very impressive. He's found some pace as well.
Matt Webb also making his way back through the field. He dropped down as far as 12th, but is now up to 8th, having just passed Philip Boak. He's looking to line up Matt Schwass next. Yeah, and so Luke, our only DNF, as Draper sets the quickest lap so far of a 2:03.5. Ollie's having a look at Webb.
Yeah, he is. We're watching it on the screen here. He's gaining all the time on that Lamborghini, but he's not close enough to make a move into turn number 1. But on that lap, when we cut to him, he was over a second behind Wedding, and he's reeled him in at a very, very quick rate of knots.
Yeah, it was good choice from Foley there. It's very hard to take turn 1 as an overtaking move unless you're already alongside, because there's not really much braking to do in there, so you can't outbrake someone. But as they come down the straight here towards turn 5, he's going to be a good chance if he's brave under brakes. We'll see how he goes though.
Yeah, it's the hardest one of the hardest braking points on the track, as we spoke about earlier. And he pulls out, just have a bit of a look, just let Wedding knows there. A little puff of smoke from Lewis Wedding and closes right up Brenton Foley. Is he going to have a look on the inside of turn number 6? No, he doesn't. But he just shows his nose, lets Lewis know he's there, and I'm sure Lewis knows that he's there. And Lewis holds on for the moment. Lewis actually losing some time to Draper at the moment, so he's lost out by nearly 2 seconds now. So Draper kicking away, wondering if Lewis is just playing a strategy game here and just trying to manage some fuel and see if he can buy himself an extra lap or something here or there, just in the odd chance that something ahead happens and he can be there to capitalise on it.
Yeah, you see how much faster Foley's to the carousel brings so much more speed coming off there. As they go into the kink, he can't overtake there, but he can set himself up.
Oh, Wedding with a little slide. Foley with an even bigger slide.
As they come down here to turn 13.
Turn 12. This is turn 12. Foley going to look for an inside move under braking, but he thinks better of it. Not close enough, but he can see that Ferrari. It hasn't so much got the legs. It's in a straight line. It's getting a hole punched in the air for it by the Lamborghini, but through the corners, that Ferrari is mighty at the moment. He's hanging on to the back of Lewis Wedding. You know, like a... Actually, I can't think of anything that hangs onto the back of something else. Like a trailer hanging onto the back of a car. Yeah. It's hanging onto the back of him very, very like closely at the moment.
Like a baby sloth attached to the back of its mother.
Well, there we go. Here's another opportunity. Here's another opportunity.
Looks to pull alongside. He is alongside. Coming into the first corner. They're going to be side by side. It's very high speed. Who is going to blink here? Wedding decides that discretion is the better part of valor here by the looks of it.
Yep.
We are hearing that Wedding is fuel saving as he goes onto the inside, so not that much clearly. Yep. But he wants the position still.
Yeah, he wants this race to come to him, so Foley's on the outside here, but Wedding gives him some space, and that's good. Or just a little bit cheeky from Lewis, just come across the apex a bit there. Foley's much closer this time for a stab into turn 5. He's following right in that Lamborghini's wheel tracks, getting a nice hole punched in the air into the inside. Lewis didn't make it easy for him, but Foley's alongside now. He'll have to pull it up on the marbles, though. Can he get it done, much like Draper did? He stays to the inside, though, and he'll still have an inside here for turn 6.
All this battling has brought Turret right into it as well.
And Graham's been buying into this as well, so as Andy gets out the way. But Wedding still prevails. Now Turret's bought in, as you said before, and so too Graham. So Foley's lost 2 or 3 positions like that. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, Wedding is proving quite the cork in the bottle at the moment, as Turret goes very wide. But yeah, Foley just sort of got pushed out into the marbles there, and Turret and Graham were able to jump through really easily. The reason Wedding's so slow is we're hearing that he's saving quite a bit. He used 7.45 litres in the previous lap, which is approximately half a litre less than what his car will be using in full quali all-out attack mode. But problem is that he might have someone run into him because he's going that much slower and having to battle so much more. As Greg Tara tries to go around the outside into turn 12, it's not going to happen there.
Nope.
Wedding retains the position.
Well, that Mercedes in a straight line is very, very quick, but Tara managing to dance that car all around Lewis Wedding's rear mirror and his rear wing at the moment. Wedding won't be enjoying this, being harassed by a Mercedes as Tara gets it just a couple of wheels on the grass there. Let's see if he can have a stab into turn 1 and make it stick. Wedding's making it very difficult for anyone that tries. Now Tara's got to run. He's alongside. He will have to give way here, Lewis, and they get to turn 1 as Tara has the high ground, but as we said, they have to pull him up on the marbles, and no, he managed to pull it up, but unfortunately he's gone wide, and Wedding sails back through, so Wedding do a wonderful defensive...
Just behind Brenton Foley, did a much better job of the overtake and got past Anthony Graham again, so he's back on to Tara now.
Yeah.
You're just wondering why Wedding is saving so much so early in the race. Does he think that the chance of a safety car is so high that it's worth saving now to try and make a one-stop strategy work? Because the problem with that is if you're saving now, the safety car comes out now, there's no way you're making it to the end of the race. So why not push now?
Oh, Wedding's wide. Wedding very wide. Tara had to take evasive action there. Foley wants to buy into this as well. 3 wide into turn 6. It's not going to go, boys. Back out of it. And sensibly, Foley does. But Tara swats across the front of Lewis Wedding's Lamborghini and sweeps through into second place. Wedding's now going to have to fuel yourself all over again, and Nangle's caught this pack as well, Bagsy. So this is a massive 5-car train at the moment.
Yeah, and also not too far behind that, 5 seconds away now, is Matt Webb. So this is really bringing Webb back into the equation too.
Yeah, Matt, it is bringing back in. Matt Webb probably not have much damage from that contact with Johnny, as a couple of retirees earlier, Voda and Luke, have retired from this race. Andy's gone 1 lap down, and Johnny is not that far ahead of Jaden Draper on track, but Draper catching him. Wedding having another look here on the outside of Tara as they negotiate the kink, and Foley's there in case anything happens, but Tara lets Wedding through, so Wedding got a much better run out of the carousel, but this is the battle pack that we're staying with. Wedding is making it very, very difficult. There's Tara spins! Tara spins to the inside there, got a little bit too happy on the loud pedal, and drops to the back of that. Matt Webb is coming through very quickly as well.
Wedding's run very wide into the final corner, and Foley's got past him already.
Yep, and Wedding's been trying to get the toe. We didn't have time to have a look at Tuz's spin because Wedding's got the toe, but now that it's Graham's got the toe on Foley and gets past Wedding as well. And is Graham going to have a look at Foley into turn 1? No, he thinks better of it. And they go into turn 1. Foley hangs on to the position. He ran it a little bit deep there. Wedding's not giving up on this. I'm not sure if he's decided I've had enough fuel saving and now I'm going to go for it. He's back on the inside of Graham here and makes the pass stick. Graham gets it back on the switchback, and they're now, I wouldn't say close enough to alongside each other on the run down to turn 5.
So drag race to turn 5.
It's a drag race. Nangle's trying to go with them. Who does he go with, though? Does he go with Wedding or does he go with Graham? He decides to go with both of them, but Graham prevails. And that's good racing by this lot. They're all giving each other as much space as they possibly can without conceding a millimetre of track space to compromise their lines. But this is a highly entertaining battle. It's a shame we've lost Tara out of this because that was very, very juicy.
Tara's only 3 seconds back on this battle and closing in yet again, and Matt Webb has just caught the back of Tara too, so it's not looking like it's going to slow down anytime soon. I was going to make mention of the previous lap before when they went 3 wide into turn 6. Foley being very sensible. He could have kept his car there and caused what would have been an almighty accident that wouldn't have entirely been his fault, but he decided that he didn't want to ruin several races and kept out of it, and now he's got the position because of that patience.
That's exactly right. Well, we should go and have a look at our race leader because here he is. He's got an 8.1 second advantage on Brenton Foley at the moment, and he is storming away at the moment. In actual fact, he's catching the pole sitter who started this race and has obviously had to tour the pits to get a brand new rear wing, and he's just, as you saw him in front of shot there, just up the hill, so it won't be very long before Jaden Draper puts Johnny a lap down. What Johnny really needs is a safety car to come out at the right time, and then he will get back on technically he's still on the lead lap until he gets past, but he really needs a safety car just to come out at precisely the right moment. But none so far. We're 7 laps in, and we've lost 2 runners, Voda and Luke. Andy's 1 lap down, and Jamie Snow has also must have toured the pits at some point as well, because he's some 1.5 minutes off the back of the race leader. So
I believe he just toured the pits this most recent lap, so maybe trying to go into an alternate strategy there.
Very possible. But Jaden Draper in a class of his own.
In fact, if the race runs green to the end, then he is 1 pit stop away from the end from here.
Yeah, but the only drama is that if Draper continues on at this pace, might even potentially put him a lap down if Snow makes a mistake, which we have seen him do every now and again, and then that's all over Red Rover.
Anthony Graham has closed up. He's after losing out to Foley a little bit. He's closed back up to him. Yeah, and he's very close as they come up towards the carousel.
Yeah, and the 2 Ferraris have kicked away from what was that 4 or 5 car train last lap around. So Foley's really got his skates on, and Graham's going with him. Wedding is being harassed by Nangle. Tara's doing his best to close in on the back of those guys. You can see them in back a shot, and there's Tara, and Webb just snuck into frame as we went there. Foley gets a little bit too wide of the kink, kicks up a bit of dust. Graham not close enough to capitalise on any mistakes just yet.
Nangle's having a go at Wedding.
Yeah, Wedding and Nangle are behind. Here we go. It's round 2 between these guys. Ding, ding, ding. Wedding holds position this time, but you get the feeling that Greg is very, very racy, and he's trying to exploit Lewis's fuel saving by pushing him into spending more fuel than he wants to.
Yeah, it's. I'm still mystified by this early fuel saving from Lewis Wedding, to be honest, because it's. I don't think it's going to help him that much at the moment, or overall in the race. We know that he's got more pace than this. As he comes across the line, he's just done a 2:04.6, and we're seeing the people at the front do 2:03.5. So he's going a second lap slower. He's been passed by 2 people, more importantly, and he's losing touch with Jaden at the front, and his closest rival, you'd say, would be Matt Webb, who's in 7th. He's apparently used approximately 5 more litres than Wedding. So Wedding saved in 9 laps. He saved 5, or probably close to 6 litres now. So he'll effectively come in 1 lap later. But is that going to be worth it? Is the real question.
That is the real question. Well, speaking of 2:03.5s that you were talking about, the guys at the front of the field doing, this man on screen did a 2:03.5 last time around, Brock Harvey, and he's found his way back up to 8th place. So 1 position higher than what he started. Solid haul of points at the moment, especially with Lewis Wedding only being 3 positions further up the road provisionally. It still tightens things up in the championship, but he needs a couple of other cars ahead to either fall off the road or to make a few more passes to see if he can solidify that position. Running a new livery this round, Brock Harvey. You can see it's a bit of a throwback livery to the some of the old V8 supercar days. He ran this in the Porsche Super Series as well on Thursday night. Similar looking livery. Actually, I have to say, it looks quite good.
Yeah, it's not too bad, that one.
Kind of suits that car.
Yeah, he's throwing in 8th as well. He's made his way up a couple of positions from where he was. He's been up and down a bit so far from his start. So
yeah, he was up as high as 7th at the early part of the race and dropped all the way back to 13th. Now find himself back up to 8th.
So unfortunately, I can confirm that Johnny has retired from the race. So our pole sitter will not be continuing the race, which is such a shame because he was showing some excellent pace there, and through no fault of his own, really. Pretty much had the race done on the first lap. Yeah,
so... Well, Wedding has now ceded position to Nangle on that last tour. So Nangle's gone up to 3rd, so up to 4th. His last lap run was a 2:04.2, Wedding a 2:05.0. So that's where the exchange happened, somewhere on that last lap. And now Nangle will be trying to get out after Graham and Foley, who have skipped away by the tune of about 3 seconds.
Still haven't been more than half a second apart for the last 2 laps like these two. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and Tara is just keeping watch. Matt Webb trying to go with him. Matt Webb recovering after that collision with Johnny at turn number 5, so probably a little post-race activity hanging over his head at the moment. But he'll have to get further up the order not to retain a position. Trying
to go from a very long way back.
Yeah, well, that's very wide from Greg Tara as well. Matt Webb will buy into this if he can into 6, but he's... Tara's very, very wide on him up as it slips and slides and oversteers off the end of turn number 6, and he'll have to get himself going. And he also cedes position to Brock Harvey and to Philip Boak. So that's music to Brock Harvey's ears, another position gained. But Tara was in the weeds off of turn 5. Bit of dirt on and dirty crap on his tyres, and then through turn 6 just lost the back end of the car, and that allows Matt Webb through into 6th place, and now an opportunity to hunt down Lewis Wedding. Let's see how quickly he can do it.
Yeah, it was almost like Matt Webb sort of got into Tara's head there. As they came down to turn 5, Matt Webb was much, much later on the brakes, and that sort of probably gave Tara a bit of a scare, and he went wide, and then looked like he was going to do it again on the subsequent corner, and just got in his head. He couldn't stick with the corner, and unfortunately let Webb through.
Yeah, he tried to stick his nose up there between turns 5 and 6 when Tara did go wide. Wasn't quite close enough to make the move stick, but Tara thought he was there, allowed in the space, and he was out on the marbles when he did it. And then when he tried to put the gas down, it was a good night nurse, and around she went. So good lap there from Matt Webb. 2:04.7, so there's a bit of drop-off starting to occur probably now with some of the tyres, and as the fuel burns off.
Just had to go into turn 1 there, and almost made it stick, but just went a bit too deep.
Yeah, so Foley and Graham still line astern. Wedding's still going with Nangle though, even though Nangle's gotten past. Wedding is still doing his best to hang on, and obviously get a little bit of punch in the air from that Mercedes in front probably helps the cause as well. He's maintaining. He's going to have to do that though, Wedding, to try and maintain the gap to Matt Webb behind. You know how quick that Nissan can be when he gets it rolling. I don't think Lewis is fuel saving anymore, Bagsy.
It's hard to say. His last lap was still a 2:04.4, which is it was a 2:04.5, which is still quite off the pace. His best lap is a 2:04.4, so he's still almost a second off the pace of the leaders.
Yeah, and I've actually. These guys are catching Graham, and Graham's dropped away from the back of Foley here, so I think Graham might have made a little bit of a mistake somewhere, maybe having another look at a pass on Foley, but he's strung out a bit now, and these guys have just caught up a little bit to the back of Anthony Graham. Still 1.5 seconds away, but that mistake is probably going to get into Graham's head, and he'll be thinking about just trying to get back into a rhythm here because he doesn't want to let these quick guys catch up to him in any hurry. Matt Webb there in back a shot is doing his best to rein in Lewis Wedding, but still to the tune of 2.5 seconds, so that gap has stabilised. Webb's not making any inroads, but he's not losing much ground either, but all you can see there now he's lost a little bit of ground, but that's just as the clock ebbs and flows. Now Wedding's close to Nangle here as they head up the hill, but he's losing time to that Mercedes. Now starting to reel him in a little bit, but you'll need to be a bit closer than that to have a stab into turn one. And I don't think he's going to be brave enough to have a go though, Lewis. No, he smartly thinks about it, but then just decides to hang on and wait for another opportunity.
Yeah, he's still fuel saving apparently, and it's going to be interesting to see how if it works out for him. So just coming through, we're on lap 12 now. We're at 23.5 minutes into the race, and we'll probably be seeing our first round of pit stops fairly soon. Most likely, based on the consumption figures, we reckon Jaden Draper will probably have to come in a lap early on lap 14, or lap 13 or 14. So
we'll soon find out.
Keep an eye on him.
We will be keeping an eye out to see what happens there. Andy's now gone 2 laps down, so not having the best of races is Andy. But this duo still continue to have a little bit of a humdinger of a battle as we wait for the first round of stops to occur.
So Jaden Draper, he's his first race in AMS Oz, and he's keeping cool and keeping calm, and he's just extending that lead by about a second a lap. He's doing quite a good job. He's built up quite a margin for himself.
He's building himself a nice buffer here, especially seeing as we know that he's going to have to stop probably, or we probably assume he's going to stop earlier than everybody else in the field. Let's have another look a bit further down the order and let's see if we can find some battles. So Aussie and Dwayne Davies are having a decent scrap here for 10th and 11th. They're only separated by 1.5 seconds, but that's probably the closest of the battles through the mid-pack. And Tara and Snow are only separated by a couple of seconds, but obviously Snow's toured the pit lane, and I dare say, judging by the other numbers, that Tara probably has as well. So maybe following Snow's lead there, going on to an alternate strategy as Aussie runs through the kink. There's Dwayne Davies, 2 McLarens in the same shot.
Got Wedding having another look at Nangle, but I've got the feeling he's going to lift off the throttle again and get out of it.
Yeah, a little bit of lift and coast from Lewis, and you're right, he does, but he's a bit closer than what he was last time around. I don't know if he wants to be
our leader is in the pits.
Oh, we didn't.
I missed it entirely.
Yeah, we missed that. So Foley assumes the lead of the race. Draper in 9th. There he is, stationary in the pits. So we missed him coming in. So that's actually 2 laps earlier than expected. So we didn't expect him till about lap 14. So this is the first play in the pit stop strategy game, and he gets going. So Draper on the move. And he's going, and there's actually a couple of other drivers in the pits as well. As we can see, it looks like Aussie's decided to come in as well.
And Davies.
And Dwayne Davies went with him. So Draper is going to come out in 10th place. And now time to put the hammer down and get going. Because the man at the front, Brenton Foley, is leading this race as we cycle through the DNFers. Voters and Johnny and Luke have all DNF'd.
It looks like Foley was about 8 seconds behind Draper when he came into the pits, and he's now 56 seconds ahead. So it looks like 1 minute and 4 seconds total time for a pit stop there.
Yeah, I suspect that Draper will probably reel in that gap very quickly, even though he's only going to be a couple more laps before that Ferrari decides to pit. Foley really needs to get the hammer down and see if he can actually, make a little bit of a gain, or if he can't make a gain on Draper, at least make a gain that he can stay ahead of the guys behind him when he does come in for his stop. As they sweep through turn 13, now down to the...
maybe coming into the pits this lap.
And now through 14, and what's Foley going to do? Foley's in. Foley in, so reacting at Ferrari, and it looks like Nangle's coming as well. Yes, he is. So too is Matt Webb and Brock Harvey. So pit stop's now starting to shake out a couple of laps earlier than expected.
Yeah, definitely. We probably thought they would go at least a lap more. We're hearing that Wedding can go almost 3 laps more, so it'll be interesting to see if he's going to put the pedal down now. Yeah,
sure is. So, and Lewis Wedding moves up to second. Anthony Graham assumes the race lead, so another lead change. How long can he make that Ferrari go? And more importantly, how far can Lewis Wedding go?
The other thing to note is it's a very long pit lane. So even if you get out of your pit stall, doesn't mean you're going to be coming out in front of a person coming onto the main straight.
No, that's right. And
as we've got Jane Draper going along the main straight now, so he's about to pass every single person in the pits here.
Yep, so he'll move back up the order. There he is. You can see him moving up the tree, moving past Foley and Boak and all those guys. And he didn't move past Nangle though, so that's a bit strange. So what happened? So what's happened with Greg Nangle? Nangle's actually come out. Nangle went into the pits. He's come out ahead of Draper. So
Nangle has not changed his tyres.
He didn't change his tyres. So that's an interesting strategy ploy. And
actually, in fact, neither did Jaden Draper. So I'm not sure if maybe Nangle didn't.
Unless anyone had some damage to repair, but I highly doubt it. But that's a masterstroke from the Mercedes team of Nangle, if that is correct, that he didn't change tyres. So he stands to gain out there because he was ahead of Lewis Wedding, and he obviously wants to retain that position, and they're all going to have to stop again anyway. So maybe if you can double stint the tyres at some point, you probably want the fresher tyres toward the end of the race when you're battling for the win or for positions, rather than at this point in time in the race. And Lewis Wedding goes through for another lap.
Anthony Graham's also stayed out for another lap.
And Graham stayed out for another lap.
Quite well.
So Graham doing rather nicely in that Ferrari, as Wedding's last time around was a 205.1, Graham a 205.6, as one of the things, Brendan Ross coming out of the pits there stays well away from passing traffic, and very good job that is. Graham managing to maintain his 2.5 second advantage over Lewis Wedding from Matt Schwass, who's yet to stop, and Greg Nangle jumping Jaden Draper in the pit stops. And then Foley and Webb and Harvey, the top 8, Tara and Boak, round out the 10.
Still not sure how Nangle managed to... Nangle's in the pits now, so he hadn't pit.
So he hadn't pit. Well, that's strange, because he had pit because he was ahead of Lewis Wedding on the track. So obviously something... If he's going in for another pit stop, then something's obviously happened to him. I didn't think tyre wear would be a determining factor here.
No,
but
you were able to double stint, not triple stint, but you could probably double stint the tyres.
Yeah, so that's
he's going up on the jacks now, so he's changed his tyres, but I don't think it would have saved him that much time, so maybe he's got to put some fuel in as well.
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, there is a time limiting factor with regards to fuel and with tyres, so we'll wait and see. We'll try and get a story on that a bit later on in the piece.
If I'm remembering correctly, it does default to 60 litres, so potentially he's done that and accidentally half-filled the tank instead of full fueling.
Well, that would be a disaster if that is the case. But nonetheless, Graham leads and possibly stopping this lap. And then whether or not Lewis decides to come the same lap or go for a bit longer, let's see what happens. So Graham through the last turn.
Because Graham has a 55-second gap on Draper, so if he...
and Graham's coming in. Graham's coming in, sorry to cut you off, Bagsy. He's coming in. So the race leader is in. Lewis Wedding goes through for another lap. So Wedding now assumes the lead of this race for the second time. And how long can he go? A 2:05.6 that time from Lewis. So he is stretching it out here. Maybe he's deciding to stretch out this first stint just in case they get a safety car in the second stint, and maybe that's where he might try and do it on the one stop. But it's a big effort and a big ask, and he's going to need it all to go his way here.
It's just to note that there was 55 seconds between Graham and Draper between when he came into the pits. So if he shorts fuels here and hopes for a safety car or potentially a longer stint later on, he could get ahead of Draper here, and same for Lewis Wedding.
Yeah, it's very possible. So let's see how all that shakes out, because we expect Wedding probably in the next lap or two. He's got a handy lead as Graham is still in the pits here, and it looks like Draper's going to come through and take that position, and he does. So Draper back into second place, but the real focus is on where Wedding is going to come out when the stop happens, and we'll see how that goes. But just having a look back in the field, because Brock Harvey was setting the timing screens alight. He's on the run up to the flag here, to the start-finish line. What time does he set? First flying lap out of the pits, and it's a 2:03.7. His best lap's a 2:03.5. So he had a very, very good sector 1 and 2, Brock Harvey, so putting the hammer down. Let's return to Wedding. Let's see what's going on. Possibly coming in this lap by the look of things, judging by the cog on your screen there with the not the magnifying glass, the spanner in it.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be in this lap. There's no way he's fuel saved that much. 52-second lead, and a minute 5 stationary time if you full fuel it and don't change tyres. If you change tyres, you add an extra 10 seconds. So minute 15 for full service. So we'll see what he wants to do.
So a minute 15 would put him out actually behind Brock Harvey at this rate. So Wedding in, and he slows it down very early before the line actually. So deciding to not attack the line and rather just be safe than sorry. Trundles down the lane, and his pit box looks like it's about halfway along the list of pit boxes. Actually, that's the halfway mark now, and there he is, and there's a man ahead of him actually leaving. So into the pits comes Wedding. He's actually crossed the line. So Draper, here he is on the way down to turn 12. He will pass Wedding in the pits. A little bit wide on the marbles there, wider than he would have liked. Kicks up a bit of dust for a good effect.
I think it's going to be close between Webb and Wedding here. I think that's what we'll probably have to be looking at, depending on how Wedding goes. Wedding hasn't changed his tyres in his pit stop, so it's fuel only here for Wedding.
Yeah, so Draper up the hill to the start-finish straight. Where is Lewis Wedding? Wedding is on the move in the pits by the look of it. Draper reassumes the lead of the race. 2:06 north at the time. There's Wedding. So Wedding just exiting the pits now, so that's a gain. Wedding has not changed his tyres. He'll come out ahead of Brenton Foley. Now what's Wedding going to do? Is he going to go into fuel conservation mode again, or is he going to attack?
Yeah, it's interesting because Foley behind him did change his tyres, as did basically everyone behind him change their tyres. Everyone behind has changed their tyres. So only the top 3 electing to, the top 2 electing to double stint here. So that'll be interesting. Also, out of sight to us, Webb did get past Graham, and Brock Harvey's actually closing in on Graham at the moment.
Yeah, he certainly is. Brock Harvey has been setting some very, very nice times, and especially that last lap around that we saw him cross the line in the 2:03 bracket. So Brock Harvey on a charge with fresh rubber underneath him. Wedding's come out, holds on ahead of Foley. Foley's just maintaining the gap at the moment. And we'll see how this shakes out over the course of the next 44 minutes. But let's go back and have a look at this this battle you're talking about, with Brock Harvey trying to close in on the back of Anthony Graham. And Graham 2.5 or nearly 3 seconds behind.
Back a bit, Brock Harvey has. So
yeah,
I'm not sure.
2.5. Nearly 3 seconds the gap to Webb ahead of Anthony Graham since the pass was made. And you're right, Brock Harvey's just dropped back a little bit, and you can see him there. He is in back a shot as Graham flies through the kink. Must say, Anthony Graham's had a rather good debut in the series. He started the last race at Spa and finished a very respectable 5th, and he's running again in 5th place at the moment. So good all-round performance. We'll see if he can maintain it. Meanwhile, Lewis Wedding, sorry to cut you off, Bagsy. Lewis Wedding has had two very good sectors. Foley's closing in, but Wedding sets a time of Foley's best time, 2:03.8. Sorry, 2:03 dead, sorry, not 2:03.8, 2:03 dead. And it might have been the trails coming from the back of Foley's car, not Wedding's car, that I could see on the timing screen.
Foley.
So Wedding potentially going into fuel-saving mode again. Let's have a look and see if Foley has a lunge down into turn number 5. He's a bit too far back at the moment, but needs to follow that Lamborghini's wheel tracks, and Lewis is off the racing line trying to break that slipstream. He doesn't want Foley to get past, but he knows Foley's quicker, as this will ruin his race if he does let Foley pass, because Foley has new tyres and Lewis Wedding does not. So this battle's shaping up rather nicely. Foley's really, as we said before, he's one of the most improved drivers of the series, and showing an excellent turn of speed as Andy gets out of the way across the grass. Good job, Andy. And Foley just dropped back a little bit there. Wasn't sure whether he thought the Porsche was coming back onto circuit, but let's get back to that point. Foley's very much an improved driver, and to be mixing with Lewis Wedding at the moment is definitely a feather in his cap, Bagsy.
Yeah, admittedly Lewis Wedding in fuel-saving mode, but I don't think it'd be too far off Wedding, even if Wedding's on full chat. We can see that Wedding gained a fair bit of time from that, as Foley has gone to the inside for turn 12. They're side by side as they come down. It's going to be a battle of who's better on the brakes, and Foley has the better tyres, so Wedding should probably just let him go. He hasn't. Wedding's going to just drive around the outside anyway. Yeah, he doesn't care if he has worse tyres. He's going for it.
Yeah, he's still hanging on here, Lewis Wedding, but with Foley pushing on behind him, I don't know if this is going to affect the strategy that Wedding was trying to employ. We know he had fuel saving on his mind in the first stint that he did. We don't know whether he's got fuel saving in mind this time around, but let's have a look at the lap time as they cross the line, as Foley continues to harass him. For Wedding, it's a 2:04.8, and look at Lewis Wedding's best lap, it's a 2:04.0, so Wedding really probably still is in fuel saving mode as Foley's alongside, and this time Foley gets through and does the job.
Wedding took a lot of curb there and almost lost it.
Yeah, very, very untidy from Lewis Wedding. Very un-Lewis Wedding-like, they would call it. And now he's dropped back from Foley a little bit as Foley scoots through turn 3, and now heads down towards turn 5. Wedding's not going away, though. He's now following that Ferrari's wheel tracks and is about to try and return the favour. And he's alongside. No, he isn't. He pulls back out and decides, no, I'm going to do more of my lift and coast.
Yeah, I think he realises that Foley has much better tyres than he does, and he's just not going to be able to keep up with him.
Well, that's an interesting situation now for Lewis Wedding, given that he didn't change tyres on that particular stint. Came out ahead of Foley. He's now lost position to a car that has better tyres. Do you honestly think that Lewis Wedding can try and triple stint these tyres to the end, or do you think it's not possible?
I'd say it's basically impossible. We saw what happened last week when the leader wasn't able to change his tyres, and by the time you get to the third stint, they basically start to puncture and you can't finish the race. There is something to be said for not stopping for tyres one time in the race, but you can potentially lose a fair bit of time. We're seeing Wedding is still holding onto the back of Foley, but I've got the feeling Foley's going to break ahead fairly soon. We're hearing from a man on the ground that there is a fair bit of Wedding is trying to push here, but it just seems like those tyres aren't going to let him.
No, so that strategy call has probably not gone in Lewis's favour here. He's going to have to see this out until the end, or pray for that safety car that we believe he's probably waiting for to try and get to the end on one stop, as we've got 39 minutes remaining. He's trying to tuck into Foley's slipstream here, trying to save as much fuel as he can and gain as much speed as he can without burning too much fuel. Well, that lap time was quicker than the last one, a 2:04.5. His time before that was a 2:04.8. He has closed up on the back of Foley here, so that slipstream probably working to good effect. Meanwhile, Draper's out in front to the tune of about 4 seconds, so he's not that far up the road.
They're closing on him because it was 6 seconds about a lap and a half ago. So
has Draper gone into fuel-saving mode?
Potentially, yeah. He's also the other person who didn't pit for tyres, so it could be that he's also not wanting to just bin it. So it'll be curious to see how this all plays out, because we know that Draper and Wedding will have to change tyres at the next stop. Foley doesn't have to, but he might want to. The thing is, though, if Foley catches up to Draper by the time the next round of pit stops happens, and the next round of pit stops will be for a lot less fuel than there'll be almost a splash and dash, basically. Probably you'd expect only 30 seconds stationary time, if that.
Yeah, well, Foley's
Probably,
now in the
probably
position.
even less.
Foley's now in a position where he's ahead of a car that hasn't changed tyres, and if I'm honest with you, I think it would make sense for him to change the tyres at the next stop anyway, because otherwise you're going to have a charging Lewis Wedding behind you, and it'll be an exchange similar to what we've just seen, where the car on fresher tyres inevitably gets past the car that doesn't have fresher rubber. But as you rightly pointed out, it's going to be for a lot less fuel and a lot less laps to go, so whether or not Foley could actually hang on to those tyres for a couple, for some less laps in a stint than what Lewis is going to have to go through, could play out to his favour.
Yeah, I think it might be, as the race stands at the moment, the smart thing for Foley at the next pit stop will probably be to not stop for tyres, because his tyres will do overall, less time than Weddings are going to, because Weddings are going to have to go all through 2 full stints, whereas Foley's only do maybe 2 1/3 stint.
Or 1 1/3.
So, yeah, so it will be...
Great lap time from Foley that time around too,
Yeah,
Bags. He's got to cut you off. He's done a 2:03.4. The gap to Draper has come down to 3 seconds now, so you're right. He's honing in on the back. Draper's last lap time around was a 2:04.7, so Foley's eating into that lead in massive chunks at the moment. It's not tenths of a second, it's second and more.
Yeah, it's gonna be quite interesting, because we know Draper and Wedding are going to stop for tyres. We know Foley probably doesn't have to, but he may want to, if he's ahead of Draper and Wedding by the time the next stops come around, knowing that they have to change tyres will mean that he can change tyres as well and still be ahead of them on pace.
That's exactly right. Well, we've also lost Turra in amongst this as well, unsighted, so he's DNF'd after 18 laps. So he was in that early 5-car battle that was very, very tasty for a number of laps, and eventually it all broke apart. So we've lost 4 runners out of this 18-car field, as I think Jamie Snow and a couple of others are exchanging positions back in the field. Not very much going on up and down the field at the moment. I mean, this is the battle of interest. Foley v Draper and Wedding. Matt Webb has still maintaining position ahead of Anthony Graham, but not by very much. He's only about 2 seconds ahead of the Ferrari man as Matt Webb. Cloud still hanging over his head from the lap 1 incident, which will be investigated post-race, no doubt. Foley hasn't taken as much out of Draper this lap, though, as he had in previous laps, but he's still going to take some time away. Let's see what lap time he does when he gets to the line this time around to complete lap 21. As Draper goes through now. Draper's in the pits. Draper's in the pits. There he is, front of shot. So Foley resumes the race lead that he had during the first round of stops. So this has got it, and Wedding goes through as well. So this is an interesting strategy call from Draper. Maybe his tyres couldn't go on.
Yeah, it's he's changed the tyres. So I'm guessing he's just decided that he's losing too much time. May as well pit now. But you think he should have waited for a bit longer, because unless it's a safety car, I'm almost 100% certain he's not going to make it to the end of this race with the fuel economy of that car.
Yeah, well, maybe he is gambling on the safety car, but it's also let Brock Harvey through, it's let Graham through, it's let Matt Webb through as well. Philip Boak's gone through, and so too Matt Schwass. So Jaden Draper is going to have it all to do here, going on to this alternate strategy. When did he stop? He stopped back on, I think it was lap 12 or 13, I think it was, Bagsy, and he's only gone about 10 laps. Obviously those tyres have cried enough, and he was just thought he was losing way too much time, but he was holding the gap quite nicely to Brenton Foley that lap around, but then all of a sudden decided, nope, we're going to go into an alternate strategy. But you're right, I think he does need a safety car in order to make that happen. I suspected we're going to get somewhere around 38 laps, and that's probably a couple more laps than what that McLaren's tank can handle.
Yeah, we're just looking at the time remaining. We've got 34 minutes remaining, and the biggest thing about this race is that it's time plus 1 lap, which means that, technically it's more of a 82 or 83-minute race. So you need to be able to have fuel for that that extra lap, and I don't think there's enough fuel saving in the world that can get this McLaren through the end without a safety car.
No, and meanwhile, the Ferrari of Foley is stretching its legs and stretching them rather nicely. He's got out to 3.8 second advantage over Lewis Wedding now, so really putting the hammer down Foley. He knows that he has to stop again. He's got tyres underneath him where he can afford to put the hammer down and make hay while the sun shines. He comes to the line to finish lap 22 and a 2:05.0 that time around, so not the best lap that he's done, but still respectable. Lewis Wedding a 2:06.2, so I think Wedding's definitely still fuel saving here, Bagsy. Matt Webb closing in on Wedding, and Graham doing his best to stick with Matt Webb as well. There he is, going through turn number 1. So it's all starting to play out with these strategy calls, and Draper definitely needing a safety car to make this happen. If it does turn out the safety car was to come out now, Draper's probably in the box seat because all the other cars ahead of him will probably have to react to the fact that he has already stopped and take on the fresh tyre and the rubbers and then see what they can do from there. But we haven't seen a safety car yet, and we cross everything and touch wood that we don't see one yet because we'd like to see how this all pans out.
Yeah, if I'm not sure. I can't quite remember if the pit lane closes on a safety car in this series. What's your take on that? Do you know what the rule is on that?
The rule is just repeat that one for me, please, Bagsy.
Do the pits close under a safety car?
I believe that is correct. So the safety car is called for the pits are closed. That'll be distinguishable by the red cross on your screen, if that is the case, and it opens the next time around.
That is confirmed. It does close when full course yellow is called. So that means that these guys at the front won't be able to pit until the first lap behind the safety car, which means that because of the nature of the length of the track and safety car, that will put Draper to the front. So he's definitely in the box seat at the moment if it happens.
That's right. Webb is closing in on Lewis Wedding. He's got the gap to under a second now. You can see on your screen there. And up the hill they go. Is he close enough to get a slipstream? He got a nice slingshot off of the last turn, did Matt Webb. But he's not quite close enough to take full effect of that Lamborghini punching a hole in the air for him. But his last lap around was a 2:03.8 to Lewis Wedding's 2:04.7. So he's reeling him in, Matt Webb. And he needs to before the next round of stops. Wedding definitely got to be still fuel saving here. I don't know what it can possibly do for him. He really needs the results to go his way, or he needs the race to go his way to make it happen.
For what we're hearing, he's not fuel saving, so he seems to just be those tyres. He's being tyre limited at the moment. We're also coming up to the 30-minute mark to go, so we're also reaching the point in the race where you can probably make it to the end if you pit now. About 2-minute laps, give or take a few seconds, and plus 1 lap on the end, depending on how the timing falls. So,
yeah.
About a stint away now. So now might be the time you'll probably see the likes of Jamie Snell and others who pit early coming in.
That's it. That gap to Lewis Wedding to Brenton Foley has stabilised, but the gap from Lewis Wedding to Matt Webb has come down quite drastically now, and it's less than a quarter of a second as Webb follows that Lamborghini through the carousel. Now they're on the power. Is he going to be close enough for a stab under the brakes into the hard braking zone at turn 12? He's right under the rear wing. Oh, he's out in the weeds, is Matt Webb. And I think Wedding might just be able to hold on here. And he does. Webb has a little look, but not close enough to make a move. But he does close right up. He's gnawing away on the back of that bumper of the Lamborghini. And I think it's only a matter of time. He's probably going to line him up for turn 1 as they come up to turn 14 now. Yeah, Wedding gets a good exit, but Matt Webb's a lot closer this time. And now he can take full effect of that slipstream up the hill. Here we go. Matt Webb to the inside. Wedding just moved over a little bit and just made it a little bit difficult for him, but not too difficult in the end. Matt Webb is through. back to the position where he started, and job done. And that's good for his race because of the way the pit stops will play out, with both men having to stop again before the end of this race.
Yeah, it's going to show that getting new tyres was a good decision for this track. It's I believe it's the middle sector where it costs you just so much time. It's you just can't get the power down or hold the car in those long corners.
Foley extended his margin that lap around to 4.5 seconds, so not putting a foot wrong is the Ferrari driver. On track for a very good result. Graham's actually caught the back of Lewis Wedding as well, so he's the next man that's going to line up the Lamborghini for a pass. We said before, Anthony Graham making his debut in the series last round at Spa with a solid 5th after qualifying in the top 5 and having a very good run this race as well.
Just I've got the championship points as it stands at the moment. It's been hard to get it done when there's been just positions changing every minute or so as I'm trying to go through it. But I'm going to quickly go through it before something else changes. As it stands, Brock Harvey will retain the lead by 1 point from Lewis Wedding. Greg Nangle will be 7 points back in third. Matt Webb will jump up into 4th place, only 10 points behind, having only participated in half of the races.
That's if the race finished where it is right now, and obviously that cloud...
We can expect a lot to change because Jaden, who hasn't participated in the race, is right down in 10th.
That's right, and also possibly a Matt Webb penalty post-race, which we kind of expect is coming, but we'll wait to see that confirmed. Meanwhile, Graham has got a nice slipstream here on Lewis Wedding down the main straight. Wedding was very, very close to putting his left-hand side tyres in the grass. I think Wedding's let him go. That's an easy pass for Anthony Graham up into the top 3. Although Wedding just really gave up the ghost then. He just let him breeze straight past.
Yeah, I think Wedding really probably should do what Draper did now and pit just to get some fresh rubber on because excuse me, sorry.
Our commentator there having a bit of a moment.
Because Draper is a bit faster now. He's got some fresh rubber on him, and he's slowly closing in comparison to Lewis Wedding.
Although I'm looking at the gaps now.
Seconds down.
I'm looking at the gaps now, though, Bagsy. He's gone from being about it's around the 52.8 to 53 and a bit second gap. So I think maybe Lewis has got one eye on that particular gap and trying to work out, can he stretch it far enough that he can actually, come out either just behind or just in front, or with enough tyres and fuel underneath him that he can challenge. But you're right. Draper eats into that lead in some parts of the circuit, whereas Wedding will eat into it and extend it the other way in other parts of the circuit. And you can see now it's dipped down into the 51.6. So Wedding having a bit of a scruffy lap this time around by the look of things, and Draper's eating it up.
The problem is that Draper's going to need to stop again anyway. So at this point, he's just losing time to those people who he's just let past. He shouldn't be letting... I mean, he's had to let these people pass because he's so slow. But he needs to pit for tyres. He's losing so much time that he's losing track of the people in front of him. He's already 7 seconds down on Foley, and while he did save a bunch of fuel, so he won't have to stop as long for his second stop. He's going to be taking tyres, so that'll negate that advantage. So unless there's a mistake from the people ahead of him on fuel, this is just all time lost for him every lap he goes round.
He's going around again too, so. Look at that, Anthony Graham, 2:03.0. That's a fantastic lap. He's second on the road at the moment. Foley's in the pits. That's the reason why Graham's second on the road. Foley's come in for his second stop. There he is. So the race leader in. That sends Brock Harvey through to 4th place. And Foley will probably likely cede position to Philip Boak as well. And yes, he does. So Boak going through to take provisionally 5th at the moment. But obviously he'll still have to stop again. And Foley's still in the pits. Matt Schwass is coming in, and Nangle still just rounding the last bend now.
And behind him, Jaden Draper.
And behind him, Jaden Draper. So that's the interesting part. So here's Draper. Draper is coming up the hill. Where is Foley in all this?
Foley still hasn't moved yet.
So
and
Draper
is going to pass it. Foley's just moving out now.
Yep, so Draper, yeah, there he goes. So Draper's going to go through, so that's a net
That's
gain.
the fastest lap too.
Yep, so Draper with a 2:02.8. He knew Foley was in, and he'd been putting in some good laps leading up to that. So Ferrari taking on a bit more fuel, but we suspect that Draper may have to stop again because he went very, very early for his second stop. And what Draper needs now is a safety car, because there's no way that he can make it to the flag without a safety car. But a safety car would be good news for Draper, but it would be bad news for Lewis Wedding.
Yeah, it's just having a look now at the gap between Foley and Webb. It's a minute and 5, so I think Foley might have put more fuel in than he actually needed to, potentially.
Well,
he's stationary for quite a long time.
Depends how thirsty that Ferrari is too. Meanwhile, Matt Webb has got Anthony Graham for company. It looks like Matt Webb's going to come in this lap, and indeed he is. He pulls off to the pit lane, and that'll be his second and final stop. That sends Anthony Graham through to the lead of this race. He's also yet to stop for a second time. It's a very nice 2:03.3. Graham's been pumping in some very, very consistent laps in the 2:03s and 2:04s, so going along rather nicely, keeping his nose clean, and now he's got to put the hammer down and see if he can continue to replicate those laps, because that will put him into a nice top 5 position yet again once this all shakes out. Wedding is still going for another lap and second. Brock Harvey's in the pits, so he's still third. Matt Webb in fourth, but that's just by fact that they've stayed stationary in the pit lane as Boak comes in as well. So everyone having a second stop. So Matt Webb out and away. Brock Harvey still stationary. Nangle's coming round the last bend now, but he's also peeling off to the inside the circuit to take service for his final stop. That sends Draper through to 6th. Where's he going to shake out in this? Because there's cars ahead of him. Harvey's still stationary. Boak's stationary. Matt Webb has come out just ahead of Draper, and so too. Well, that's a Ferrari, I think, of Brendan Ross. I was a bit worried for a minute then, but no, it's Brendan Ross. So Matt Webb has taken over. Oh, that's a gain for Matt Webb on Jaden Draper. And Foley, where's he? He's rounded turn 1 as well, so he's come out ahead of Boak and Harvey. Harvey now running down the pit lane. There he is on screen. Boak coming out behind him. So actually Boak saved some time in that pit stop because he was a bit further back of Brock Harvey than was originally. So a little bit of a time gain there for the BMW driver. But coming onto circuit is Brock Harvey into a net 6th place. And if Harvey changed tyres, now's the time he's got to put the hammer down while Lewis Wedding has still got worn tyres underneath him.
So Brendan Foley did change tyres again. Matt Webb did not, which is why while he's only just ahead of Draper, he's about 11 seconds ahead of Brendan Foley. So that's that gap there. Foley probably shouldn't have taken on tyres there. It would have put him up as Webb has gone past Draper there.
Yeah, so Webb was ahead of Draper, but obviously Draper had challenged, and now they're having a nice little battle, and here they are.
My apologies.
A nice exchange, and Draper's on the inside of Webb here. Webb gives him the room because he's out in the marbles, and Draper gets through, and Foley's behind this duo by the tune of 11 seconds now, so
Draper's in a second in just a sector.
Yeah, well, Draper's definitely going to have to stop again if things go the way we expect them to, because we don't expect that McLaren is going to make it to the line without a safety car, as Webb's trying to latch on to the back of that McLaren for a tow up the main straight. And he's not quite close enough, is he, for a stab into turn 1? No, he thinks better of it and just hangs on to position for the minute, but he gained very, very quickly, very, very late down the straight there. And Graham and Wedding yet to stop, so we need to see how this all shakes out. But geez, Webb's very, very close.
Hearing that Lewis Wedding will be coming in at the end of this lap, so potentially Anthony Graham will as well.
Yeah, well, Graham would want to cover that off. He wouldn't want Wedding on fresh tyres to put in a scorching lap or two and then get undercut by Wedding. But Matt Webb just continues to shadow Jaden Draper here. We've got just under 19 minutes to go. So strategy hasn't worked out for Lewis Wedding if it is true that he can't make it to the end. He's tyre limited. He's all over the place at the moment. Losing time to Graham. Actually, stabilising, but doing his best to stabilise it.
He's got 48 seconds on Webb. So the question is, has he done
Oh, he's
enough
wide
to
off the
meet-
last turn. Oh, very loose as well, Lewis Wedding. But no, he keeps going.
He's going for another one.
So that's
correct information.
So maybe a bit of possum down in the
mind
pit.
games from Lewis.
Bit of mind games. Well, his lap time around was a 2:05.5, but he had one hell of a moment off the last turn there. Very nearly sent it off the road. And somehow he's managing to drive that car with worn rubber and still maintain a decent lap time. It's slower than what we know he's capable of, but strategy he's made for himself. He's made his own bet. He's got to line it now. There's the cog on your screen, so that means he's coming in this lap. So it'll be the end of lap 30 for Lewis Wedding. The question is,
he might come in again this lap. He's got 2 laps of fuel left still, so he could still go around another time after this. We're not sure.
But his tyres are a limiting factor, and he's very wide there off of the exit of turn 5. Those tyres are crying enough, and he really needs to get in there and get some fresh rubber on, and then we'll see what he's capable of. I think he'll be absolutely on it, because the men that he's racing are the likes of Draper, Webb and Foley, and at this stage that's where our eyes will be when he does take service. Meanwhile, Draper has gotten a bit of a march on Webb at the moment, so that battle was very close, and now he's got some distance. Foley's not making any inroads into Draper now, but Matt Webb dropping off the back, he is making some inroads, so it hasn't really played out in favour of the Ferrari driver this time around. Draper looks like he's coming in as well, Bagsy. The cogs just popped up for him as well, so that's...
Yeah, we knew he wouldn't make it to the end.
We knew he wasn't going to make it to the end, but that's an interesting situation now. Does he take just fuel, or is he going to take some tyres as well, do you think?
He'd take just fuel in this scenario. He's still got plenty of good tyre left on him.
Wedding's in. Wedding is in, and Graham is in as well. So it's a pit stop race. It was about 6 seconds between them. Let's see. Wedding we know is going to have to get tyres, but he's probably going to have to get less fuel. And we'll see how all this pans out. And we suspect that Draper will be in this lap as well, which is going to drop him down the order. So that 3-stop strategy hasn't worked out or the safety car strategy hasn't worked out in favour of Jaden Draper, but he's going to have to come in for a third time. It'll drop him right down the order. Matt Webb, we know he's potentially got that penalty still hanging over his head, but it'll be interesting to see where Foley comes up with all of this, because where are they all? There's Wedding. Graham's out of shot. Draper's coming around the last bend now, and no, he's going for another lap, Jaden Draper, so maybe deciding to come in after this lotto. So Graham on the move. Draper goes past into first place. Graham's second. Where's Matt Webb? Matt Webb gets through for second place. So Anthony Graham comes out third. Lewis Wedding still fourth, but Foley's coming down the main straight. How's this going to play out? Wedding on the inside, and Foley will not get past. So how is that? That's affected. So changing tyres has affected Foley, or maybe he has taken on more fuel than what he needed, but he's got warm tyres. He's up to speed. But can he make the most of it while he's got the warm rubber underneath him? He's never going to get a better opportunity than this. He's right close to Wedding. He needs to have a go, and he needs to have a go now.
Foley shouldn't have taken tyres his last stop. He would have been 10 seconds up the road and battling with the other guys. Oh, he's got a lot of speed here on the outside to Lewis Wedding, though. Can he hold it on the outside? They break into turn 5. Wedding has the high ground and forces him wide. Yeah, so Wedding's new rubber proves superior there, and he hangs on, but this is a tasty little battle shaping up. Foley had the move done, but he picked the wrong side, but Wedding covered the inside, knowing that that's where Foley wanted to go. But the Ferrari driver will be kicking himself. Having it change the lead as they come into carousel. Webb has got right onto the back of Draper.
Yeah, he has. Now Draper has cancelled the pit menu, so I'm not sure what's happening here. Maybe he thinks he is right to the finish, but Webb has closed up and very quickly, so maybe a mistake somewhere from Draper in that first or second sector. But the Nissan driver is right onto the back of the McLaren now, as they come up to turn number 12. And I think this will be on up the front straight. Webb a little bit wide, kicks up a bit of dust. And Nissen is very, very close, and now it's going to be a straight-out dragos. Webb very deep under brakes, and he locks it up, and he loses a bit of time, but gathers it back up beautifully, and is right onto the back of the McLaren now, up the straight. He's going to have a go into turn 1. It's a matter of time. Draper tries to cover the line. Webb goes to the outside. I'm not sure if that's the place you want to be. Who's got the bigger brakes? And it happens to be... well, both of them do. Webb's on the marbles, Draper's on the inside, and Draper prevails for the moment. But the next opportunity is just about 15 so seconds away, down at turn number 5 as they negotiate 3. Matt Webb needs a good exit, and he didn't get a good exit. Now the Nissen kicks in a little bit, but I think he's probably a bit too far back. Meanwhile, Wedding and Foley are still doing their best to exchange insurance details as Draper hangs on, and Graham's on the back of this battle as well. Sorry, Bagsy. Graham is on the back of this battle, just watching these two ahead of him go at it.
I think Graham has much because Graham changed tyres at his last stop, even though he didn't need to, along with Wedding. So he's deviated from the strategy that Matt Webb did. Matt Webb gained 10 seconds or so by not changing tyres, but Anthony Graham had that time in his pocket. So now Anthony Graham has fresh tyres compared to Webb's that are quite used. We are almost 100% certain that Jaden Draper is going to hit at some point in the next 12 minutes, unless he has found some form of perpetual motion to power that McLaren. So we think that the fight for the lead at the moment is Matt Webb, Anthony Graham, which Graham certainly has the advantage, but that advantage that he has to Lewis Wedding is closing slowly.
Yeah, I was going to say, meanwhile, while Webb is trying to attack Draper, Graham is attacking Webb, and then Wedding and Foley are closing in on this lead trio. They've taken a second out of him on the last lap, but they're fast running out of time. They only got 11.5 minutes to go. A safety car would close this field up enormously and probably give us a sprint finish over one lap, but we hope that doesn't happen. But Graham's very close to Matt Webb now. Probably not close enough for a stab into turn 1. He'd have to be very brave to have a go. And no, I don't think he's going to do. Lewis Wedding sets a 2:02.7, so there's the pace that Lamborghini has had in it all along, and he can smell blood in the water, and he's now on a charge. Now that he's got fresh rubber underneath him, finally. Maybe that strategy, although be it unconventional, might come to him.
Anthony Graham needs to make this pass very quickly if he wants a shot at winning this race, because Wedding is on an absolute charge at the moment. Yeah,
he really needs to get past, and also Draper really needs to get a wriggle on. And here he goes. Here's Graham down the inside of Matt Webb. Beautiful manoeuvre. Matt Webb gives him the space, and that was a textbook pass into turn 5.
Excellent job from Graham. He was late on the brakes. He knew Matt Webb didn't have the grip. He's got through. Now he just needs to get through on Draper and absolutely put the pedal down, because he's been slowed up by a couple of seconds a lap compared to Wedding at the moment, who's broken the back of that challenge Foley was putting up, unfortunately.
Yeah, he certainly has. Meanwhile, Wedding continues to push. Foley's still not out of it, but he really needs to gather it up and try and stay with Lewis Wedding. But these guys are all setting really, really good or reasonable lap times. Meanwhile, Lewis Wedding is doing even better, and he's got Sector 1 time that is purple. And we wait to see what Lewis Wedding can do in Sector 2, and we're just waiting on that time to come through, but he really is charging and charging hard. And not the best Sector 2 time. Foley had a very good Sector 1 time as well. But these guys are catching the back of this train, and fast.
Got the feeling Graham's going to have a go at Draper going up the straight here.
Well, let's have a look. He is. He's very close. Draper's gone defensive. What sort of lap times is Draper doing? Let's have a look at what his lap time is when he comes across the line this time around. It's a 2:04.1, so it's not exactly slow, although he put 2 wheels in the grass when he shouldn't have had to. Now he has to go defensive and cover the line a little bit, to which he does.
Wedding with a 2:02.9.
Yeah, so Wedding continuously relentlessly in the 2:02s now, catching Matt Webb very, very quickly. I'm wondering if Draper is trying to fuel save a little bit and try and get to the flag, but we've been worried about the. He came in on lap 22 for his second stop. I'd be absolutely, as you said, he has to find something to be able to power that McLaren. It's not a hybrid. He's going to have to find somehow of getting to the line. It's not going to work in his favour. He's gone very deep. That's going to cede position to Anthony Graham. So Draper went very, very deep at turn number 5. Gathered it up to get back into second place, but now he's got Webb all over him. Wedding has joined this battle as well. He's only 0.8 of a second off, and it's all closed up. Anthony Graham is your current race leader, and he's driving extremely well, and hopefully, for his sake, he'll be able to walk away from these guys as quickly as possible, because he doesn't want that Lamborghini behind him in closing laps.
I think he's going to have to deal with it anyway, because Wedding is coming right up to the back of Matt Webb now. He still needs to pass 2 cars to get to our current leader, Anthony Graham, but it doesn't look like they're going to be putting up too much of a fight.
Well, here goes Wedding. Here goes Wedding. Round the outside, through down the chute towards turn number 12, and he gets the job done. Lewis Wedding on the inside moves up to position number 3, and that's great for his championship, but he's still got 2 cars to pass, and he's got 7 minutes 20 seconds to do it as he rounds turn 14. Look at this, positions 1, 2, 3, 4. There's Foley, 5, just a little bit too far back at the moment. Needs these guys ahead to squabble if he wants to buy in. Wedding with a 2:02.6, fastest lap of the race. The man is on fire. Webb's not done yet, tries to feign interest into turn 1, but Lewis is not fooled or distracted by that. And this Lamborghini has come alive since it's put on new boots.
Yeah, it certainly has. Sort of makes you wonder if he'd pit a bit earlier, 5 laps earlier, he might have been 10 seconds down the road and not having any issues with all this. But, you know, he's decided to make it hard for himself, and it's easy for us to say in the comfort of a commentary booth what a good strategy is. When you're in the car, it's a lot more difficult. That
move from Lewis Wedding as well has put him provisionally equal with points on Brock Harvey at the top of the championship standings if they stay where they are, although he's having a look on the inside of Draper here, and if he gets through, that's going to put him ahead. They touch, and Wedding gets through on Draper, so that will now move him to the championship lead provisionally as well. So Wedding assumes the lead of the series that he had lost over the last 2 rounds via means of technical dramas, and now he sets his sights on that Ferrari of Anthony Graham with 5 minutes 50 to go, and this is a very tasty battle that's going to shape up to the flag. We're probably going to get another 3 or 4 laps in before this is done. Webb is now having another run with Draper here. Draper doesn't want to give it up that easily. Webb's on the podium at the moment, still with that question mark over his head, but Draper, we surely cannot be very far away from stopping. I don't know why he's even bothering to have a look at the inside of Webb unless he's found some miraculous way to save fuel. But he continues to press Draper as they come up to turn 14.
Foley sitting in back here in 5th, despite that, still has a chance at the podium, because we think as we've got Draper coming into the pits now.
Draper's in, so we knew we couldn't make
5
it.
5 minutes from the finish.
So disappointing for the McLaren driver. That puts Foley into 4th place, which we suspect is going to become a net 3rd with a Matt Webb penalty hanging over his head. But we will see how that all shakes out. We don't know what the stewards are thinking. We can only assume. But sometimes, as they say in the stories, assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups.
Indeed. And we've got just a note, because Draper is having to do that quick pit stop. Brock Harvey's going to get through, as Brendan Ross has got a penalty. I'm not sure what that was for.
That'll be
track cuts.
It's possibly. It's possible, because he's not in.
He's just coming into the pits.
Yeah,
now.
He's just coming in the pits now, so he wasn't in the pits at all.
Brock Harvey, though, has been promoted to 5th, though, thanks to Jaden Draper's pit stop, and he's approximately 10 seconds ahead of him, so that should be a safe position for Brock Harvey.
I was saying some considerable margin as well. That is 10 seconds. I don't think that Draper's going to make any inroads into that. So, in terms of the championship battle, Brock Harvey's doing his best to pick up what points he can, given that Wedding is currently on a charge and staring at a first place here, but Wedding will assume the points lead in the championship, even if he finishes where he is. But he's honed in on the back of that Ferrari of Anthony Graham very, very quickly. We're going to get probably 2 more laps here, plus then the third, and then when the white flag will come out, and then it'll be the final lap. So he's got to hold on here for 3 more laps, Graham. But it's very, very quickly becoming a very, very difficult task to achieve. These guys have kicked away from third place Matt Webb as little local yellow flags out for the moment, so we're not sure what that's for. Someone nearby, there it is, it's Andy off of the last turn, so no passing through 14, but Wedding's very, very close here. In actual fact, Foley's gotten onto the back of Matt Webb as well for a true third place, if he can make it happen. Wedding a 2:02.1, absolutely on the ragged edge. He's on the outside here. Graham defends very, very fairly and very, very well, but a bit of smoke trailing off the back of the Ferrari. He's gone deep and around, and he's looped the car. That's heartbreak for Anthony Graham, and Foley comes around, and so too Matt Webb, and that was probably all of his own doing. Let's have a look on the replay. Wedding feigned to the inside. Graham covered it, and then went to the outside, and probably just went a little bit too deep, carried the braking through on the marbles, and then tried to gas it up a bit too early, and he's unfortunately looped the car.
Brendan Foley on the outside coming into turn 5, having a look at Matt Webb, and
he's got a job done.
He's got fresher tyres. Nice and easy move for him.
Yeah, he got the job done nice and early. Let's go and have a look at the replay of that, because we did miss that while we were looking at the Anthony Graham spin. So here it is, down the chute from turn 3 through the kink in turn 4, and down the outside actually, Brenton Foley, and pulls it up nicely under brakes, and that's a very, very good move.
Webb is having to fuel save, so potentially he might be short on fuel, so that could bring Graham's only 3 seconds down him, so Graham could still get back up on the podium. And we've seen people run out of fuel, notably Corey Ott back in Adelaide.
Let's not remind ourselves of that, because we know what fuel saving can do. As I'm just watching some MotoGP replay at the minute, but I know you don't like spoilers, so I'm not going to say anything. But that was a rather interesting thing I just saw. But what's really going to happen for Matt Webb? It depends on when Wedding crosses the line. Looks like Wedding's about to cross the line now with a minute to go, so there'll be 2 laps at the end as Wedding comes across the line here. Yeah, 2 more laps after this.
Webb is going to be very, very close on fuel. Very close.
2:03.7 for Lewis Wedding that time around, so he's backed his pace off. He doesn't need to worry too much at the moment. He's got quite a nice
Matt Webb's
gap.
Just done a 2:07.2.
Yeah, that's an astonishing...
So Graham is certainly closing on him, and Brock Harvey might actually gain another position here. So
Brock's a bit far. Brock's a little bit far back from this battle, though. He's 24.5 seconds behind Matt Webb, so Webb would have to literally run out of juice for Harvey to gain any advantage from it. And if he's doing 2:07s, if he can do another couple of 2:07s, Matt Webb, he'll still stay ahead of Brock, but he's not going to stay ahead of Anthony Graham for much longer, I don't think, if he is fuel saving. He's doing everything to try and break the slipstream of that from that Ferrari as well, but down the outside, Anthony Graham sides past Matt Webb and makes it look easy, and that's a net third for the Ferrari driver. And very well deserved, very well measured drive, apart from the spin on the last lap, which cost him a shot at the win, or even a second place. So he's going to have to settle for third at this point, Anthony Graham, but take nothing away from him. An excellent drive so far.
I gotta say, I don't know if it cost him a shot at the win, because Wedding is just in a class of his own at the moment. Once that final pit stop happened and he got those fresh tyres, he just absolutely put the hammer down.
Yeah,
and he could have been even further ahead if his strategy had been better, to be honest.
That's right. Speaking of good results, as they stay where they are, as the clock goes 0, this man, Brenton Foley, has driven an exceptional race. Definitely got his act together after some of the troubles that he's had in some of the races we've been through with off-track excursions and pit stop strategy, but a second place finish would be music to his ears, and all that after starting 7th. And a very, very measured drive. Not a scratch on that Ferrari. Lewis Wedding takes the white flag. We have 1 lap to go. So it'll be a 39-lap race. So we weren't too far off our 38-lap prediction. At a 2:04.1 that time around for Lewis Wedding. He's cruising to victory. His 4th victory of the series.
A 2:08.3 for Matt Webb, so I think he might have the fuel to make it, but he's had to be off the throttle very, very early.
Yep. Nangle and Schwass are the only other closest battle really on track. You can see them on your screen there for 8th and 9th. We really haven't paid a great deal of attention to what's been going on down the field. But take nothing away from this man. We questioned what strategy call he'd made by going long and not changing tyres, and that they were crying, but it's fallen into his lap rather nicely, Lewis Wedding. Lady Luck has certainly shone upon him today, and he's shown these guys just what he can do with a car.
He's done really well. He's shown us what we missed out on in the last 2 races where he DNF'd early, and which is just some absolutely excellent pace, excellent driving, and maybe not excellent strategy, but you can't take it away from him. It has worked today, and I mean, if it works, it's probably not a bad strategy, is it?
No, certainly not. Well, we'll get the lowdown from him. He's always gracious in giving us his time after the race, and I'm assuming today will be no exception. He'll be grinning from ear to ear, this man, as he comes down to turn 12, Canada corner for the final time. And through turn 13 and on the run to turn 14. Well, he won in Adelaide.
Oh.
He won in Magny Cours. He won in Suzuka. And then he had a pair of 2 DNFs. And we said it earlier, if he's not starting or finishing the races, he's winning them. And it's race victory number 4 of the season for Lewis Wedding. And retakes the championship lead with a race to go. Job well done, Lewis Wedding. Brenton Foley comes down to finish 2nd. Outstanding drive from him. Same 2 for Anthony Graham. Matt Webb will finish in 4th after starting on the front row. So the race winner from the last 2 races backs it up with a 4th place. So still nicely poised in the championship position. Brock Harvey, who led the championship coming into this round, a very respectable 5th, and still keeps himself in an earshot of that title with his 5th place finish. We now wait for Philip Boak, rounding the last bend, to come down to the line for 6th place finish. He's one of the biggest movers of the race, up 7 positions. And a good 6th place result for Philip Boak. Nangle, he now rounds turn number 14. After being involved in that battle rather early on, he fell away and finishes in 7th. Matt Schwass is comfortably ahead of Jamie Snow at the moment for 8th. Snow will be 9th. Dwayne Davies will be 10th. Draper didn't finish the race, so Draper has DNF'd, so something has come of the McLaren driver. Not sure what happened there.
He had a spin on the final lap and lost his rear wing. So
very, very unfortunate for Jaden Draper. He will be the 11th place finisher, even though he has DNF, because Brendan Ross and Aussie are 1 lap down. The Schwass has crossed the line. Snow coming up to the last corner now, and Dwayne Davies a little bit further back. And Brendan Ross has crossed the line now, so he doesn't gain a position on Draper at all. There's Draper, sad and sorry for himself in the pits. Davies, I think, might actually be out of fuel here because he's very, very slow. I'm not sure if he's going to make it around in time. But Jamie Snow crosses the line to finish 9th. Yeah, Davies has run out of fuel here, Baxi, I think.
Whoops, that's unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate. Well,
he will still get his 10th.
He will still get his 10th. He will still get his 10th place, but pulling over to the side of the road. Take nothing away from this man. There's some celebratory donuts going on with Philip Boak and Co. But take nothing away from this man, Lewis Wedding. He has, by an uncontroversial or a controversial strategy call, made it work for him, and he takes his 4th victory of this GT3 season.
Yes, and with taking that victory, he is now 4 points ahead in the championship lead from Brock Harvey. He's on 80 points. He's had 4 wins, 20 points per win. That is an 80-point amount of points he has. 4 points ahead of Brock Harvey. Greg Nangle, who has been right up there for most of this series, had quite a anonymous race today. He ended up coming home in 7th. So he lost some points to Brock Harvey, and he was even with Lewis Wedding, but he's now 11 points down on him.
Yeah, so not that still mathematically in the championship hunt, but unfortunately he would need a lot of results to go his way in order for that championship challenge to materialise. So in reality, it's really going to be down to Lewis and Brock for championship honours. I think even Brock would be very pleased to be leading the Pro B standings and probably quite comfortably settle for second in the standings, but he'll probably still be giving it his all, and he's with us at the moment. So Brock, you had a wonderful clean drive today, and you finished 5th. You've ceded the points lead in the championship back to Lewis, but you're only 4 points adrift. I know it's a bit early to be looking ahead to the last race of the season, but what are your thoughts?
Oh, it was fun while it lasted. The championship lead, that is. It was a bit of a weird race, actually. I can't qualify this car. It just doesn't have the 1 lap pace in it, but it's got a good race pace. And I was up to, I think it was 5th or 6th, and Greg Nangle and I were having a really good race. And we got side by side, and neither of us wanted to concede a corner, and we've rubbed, and I came off second best there. So I think I dropped down to about 12th on that. And then the rest of the race, I was just picking my way back through. And then once I got into 5th, I kind of was pretty lonely for about an hour there. So I was trying my hardest not to keep it, or not to smash it into the wall.
Excellent. Well, you definitely did keep it clean, kept it out of the walls, and bring it home 5th. There's nothing to be frowned upon. It's certainly a good result. You've strung together some good results in recent weeks. You've had, apart from your DNF at Sebring, you had 7th place at Spa, keeping your nose clean. You had 4th at Suzuka. So you're stringing together the points. You're still mathematically in this championship hunt. Do you think you're going to have the opportunity to challenge Lewis, or do you think you're going to be quite happy to settle for 2nd overall and 1st in class honours?
We'll give it a go. Lewis, as you know, Lewis is in the league pretty much. So I don't think the Laguna Seca circuit's really going to suit the Aston Martin at all. So yeah, we'll again, the strategy for the endurance season has been pretty much to keep your nose clean and just hope the result comes. So it's worked so far. Yeah, we'll just have to do the same at Laguna and try not to get caught up in anyone else's battles throughout the race, and yeah, go from there.
Fantastic. Well, our race winner has joined us, and Lewis Wedding, first of all, Lady Luck was probably due to shine on you at some point after your issues that you had at Sebring and at Spa, and she certainly shone on you today. Your strategy was a little bit unconventional. Talk us through it.
Well, I was sort of at the start, like obviously I was hoping to sort of qualify at the front. I didn't quite do that, but obviously after the first lap, first corner, I got to the lead, and then seeing everybody's pace was really up there. So I thought, okay, if I try and push and fight, you know, it could end up just being a little bit of a fight, and I wanted to make it, or try and make it a bit easier on myself, which I inadvertently didn't. But I just tried to save fuel. I knew the McLaren, I'd done testing in all the cars and worked out the fuel for each car, and so I was just trying to save as much fuel as I can. And after a couple of laps behind Foley and I think Nangle, I was able to save over a litre of fuel a lap, which enabled me to pit later than I thought I could even save fuel. So that helped in the first stint, and I didn't change tyres, but I come out in front of Foley, and that was okay, except I had no tyres. I didn't change at the pit stop. So I was pushing in the second stint, but just couldn't get the lap times. And then at the end, obviously, I had come out just in front of Foley, but I knew this time I could just change tyres and had, perfect amount of fuel to get me to the end. So I could just push it, and I was breaking in qualifying lap times. And then obviously I think Matt in front of me He was getting held up a bit, which helped. And then later on, found out he had his own fuel issues, which helped. But I don't know if it was so much luck, but I think it was just a bit of. I guess there was some luck. There's a combination of luck, and then there's also speed in that as well. Obviously, with Johnny having his issue on the first lap and stuff, it would have been a different race perhaps. But I'd like to think I won this one as opposed to Lady Luck shining on me, I think.
Well, it certainly showed your pace toward the end there. The Lamborghini was absolutely flying, and it's put you back into the points lead by 4 points over Brock going into the final round in a couple of weeks at Laguna Seca. Your thoughts on that upcoming round?
I think it's going to be a complete far cry to what this track was. I reckon Road America was these cars suited them perfectly. I mean, you could stretch the legs in them. They're fast sweeping corners that the aero works in them, and the tires work really well. And then I think Laguna's going to be really tricky. Obviously tonight we only saw I think 1 or 2 cars lapped, and really only 1 or 2 DNFs. So I reckon it's going to be an attritional race, and I reckon there's going to be a bit of there'll be, as opposed to here, there's going to be bigger gaps throughout the field. So it's going to be interesting battling through traffic on a shorter circuit, as well as what the fuel load and strategies are going to do. So hopefully the Hurricane suits it. I don't know what it's going to be like around there, but yeah, hopefully it suits it, and hopefully it's a fitting finale.
Well, we certainly hope so. Well, the Championship 10 at the start of the night's proceedings has become, the Championship 5 mathematically, in terms of its Lewis Wedding from Brock Harvey by a tune of 4 points, 80 to 76. Greg Nangle is in the equation still. He's back there on 69, and mathematically Matt Schwass on 63 and Matt Webb on 62 are still in the championship picture, but they need a lot to go their way in order for those positions to change. Well, we look forward to what's coming up, but before we do, a word from Bagsy.
Yeah, just a word on Matt Schwass, who's in 4th in championship. His best result has been a 6th place. He's had 3 of them. But he's still up there in the top 4. He's been here for every race but the first in Bathurst. So it's an excellent job from him to be doing quite well and being still in the championship, championship battle, despite having been never in the top 5 even. He's had that consistency. It's been quite good. And also into the final round, Wedding just needs a 2nd place to clinch the championship. Being 4 points ahead, 17 points for 2nd place will give him an unassailable lead in the championship. So.
Sure will. Well, in terms of the championship, we take a little bit of a break because we've got some rather interesting events coming up. So this coming Thursday, with the absence of the Super Series now, we've got the aptly named, or it's been dubbed the Brock Harvey Invitational. It's some ARC cars around the Surfers Paradise Street Circuit coming up this Thursday, and proving to be a very popular event, so tune in for that one. Then next Sunday, we've got something that our fearless El Chifo has put together. It is the AMS Oz Indy 500. Yours truly be racing in that one from Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the USA, and that has also garnered a supreme amount of interest. And then next Thursday, on the 12th of July, Supercars Round 8, the international round, which replaces the Townsville event because there isn't a Townsville track available for AMS, and that will be held at Montreal, which is the Formula One circuit in Canada. Well, you've been watching Round 8 of the AMS Australia GT3 series. The championship goes down to the wire in a couple of weeks. Bagsy and I will join you then, but until next time, as always, please drive safely.